and emergency shelters so we could just take care of those that were with us at that time and really reduce the risk of any continued spread of COVID.
How has the community supported you during this time, Danielle?
Yeah, we have had amazing support. While we were out at the rec center in South Jordan when we were displaced, we had people bringing us meals. We didn't have a kitchen, so we had people bringing dinners and breakfast, and then we worked with Catholic Community Services to bring lunches in every day for our guys out there. So we are abundantly blessed by our community.
And for more information on how to support the rescue mission of Salt Lake, please go to utahgivesback.com.
I learned it from my coaches. Expect more. I'm Blake Moore, and I carried that motto with me my whole life. From football to the Foreign Service to my work now helping businesses grow and thrive. America's facing some big challenges: economic, public health, and with China. In this election, the right experience matters. I'm Blake Moore, and I approve this message because America can emerge strong from this crisis by expecting more.
Conservative Blake Moore for Congress.
Paid for by Blake Moore for Congress.
Download the KSL News Radio app, powered by Any Hour Services.
This is Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes. As the state's top prosecutor,
We have emergency traffic going on out there right now. Traffic and weather together brought to you by Mountain America, your home for home loans. Andy, where's the problem?
It's up in Davison County, all right on the border with Weber County. We've got a crash on I-15 northbound near the Westgate to Hill Air Force Base, the 650 North Clearfield exit, the HOV lane, and, well, there's not really an HOV lane in that construction zone. But at any rate, the left 2 lanes are blocked, and traffic is a parking lot all the way back to Hillfield Road, so south of Layton Hills Mall is where the delays begin. And you're looking at probably 45 minutes of delay, maybe even longer than that to get up past Hill Air Force Base. The problem is you can't go over to Highway 89 because of the construction. That's a mess from Antelope Drive all the way up to I-84. Southbounders are backed up from the top of the hill down because you only got 1 lane open through the area, all the way down to SR 193. So just a mess on both sides of the base for your north and southbound routes. I'm Andy Farnsworth in the KSL Traffic Center.
In Utah, a special hour with David Dujanovic on KSL News Radio 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
All day long, KSL News Radio is covering an important issue, all related to race relations right here in Utah. Recent events involving police brutality, protests, even what we saw in downtown Salt Lake City a few weeks ago, have sparked a nationwide discussion about race. And we invite you to stick around today to hear so many different perspectives from Utah's Black community. And what Dave and I hope is that our conversations in the next hour that we have on air will start conversations around the kitchen table tonight. And Dave, as you know, we are broadcasting this live on KSL News Radio's Facebook page and also on kslnewsradio.com.
Yeah, that's right. There are so many ways to tune in, whether it's the Facebook page live, you could podcast this later, but it's
I love what you said last hour, Dave, as we were looking forward to this hour of discussion. And that is, let's listen and let's listen to learn. Our first guest today is Dr. Tamara Stevenson. She oversees the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and serves as the Chief Diversity Officer for Westminster College. She's joining us right now. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. How are you all doing this morning?
Do we have Dr. Stevenson on the line? I'm not hearing her audio. We're working on your audio, Dr. Stevenson. I know you can probably hear us. For some reason, we just have a little bit of a technical glitch. Now I think we can hear you, Doctor.
I'll try it again. Good morning.
Good morning. So glad to have you with us. So let's start here. And then you take us in the direction that you feel like the conversation needs to go. It seems as though we're experiencing a very, very pivotal moment in our nation and here in Utah, with the attention, of course, on race relations and policing both really sky high. Do you think that America will experience meaningful change just due to the protests that we've been seeing across the country and here in Utah? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think to start, I'm glad you're having this conversation. It is an important and necessary conversation, but unfortunately, it's been a conversation that's been had repeatedly over time. I do think this is a pivotal moment, a tipping point, if you will, in part because there are so many more opportunities for people on the ground, on the grassroots, to share their lived experiences about what they've been dealing with personally in the workplace and society and neighborhoods. And so these protests are gaining ground because people are seeing others who are in agreement with wanting to see structural change, deep change that is greatly needed.
So often, Debbie and I on this show, we talk about our own personal experiences. And Dr. Stevenson, I can tell you from my own personal experiences of living and growing up here in Utah, there's just not a lot of African-American families that are in my neighborhood. I graduated from Layton High School. There were a handful of people of color in our entire school. So this is just not something that comes naturally to me. Is there a way that I can educate myself better and help understand some of these issues because I haven't experienced them firsthand?
So what I think is happening now is I think part of this conversation is that realization that there are some whites who've just not had direct experience with people of color, people who are.
Did we lose Dr. Stevenson? Okay.
This is one of the struggles that we have occasionally in this world. We have some technical difficulties, but we'll work on getting Dr. Stevenson back. And what I'm hearing is she says, this is part of it, right? This is these uncomfortable conversations. Knowing that you don't know everything is okay.
And I think she's back on the line. So go ahead and continue answering the question, Doctor.
Sure. To Dave's question about kind of not knowing how to process or even recognize the causes for the unrest, I think the conversation that's different this time around is that realization that there are some whites who just simply have no idea of how to process what's going on because in part they've been able to live in isolation or in some sort of insulation that protects them from race-based stress. And one of the ways that whites can begin to engage, all of us continue to engage, is to really think about how our biases are formed, to really think about how we come to know how our beliefs and values are formed and how we accept them and how we continue to allow those beliefs and values to lead our lives, especially when we're now seeing and hearing experiences that might contradict the worldviews that we've grown up in.
Dr. Stevenson, give us some conversation starters. As a parent, I want to be able to start this conversation tonight when I have my 3 adult kids over for dinner.
So I love that conversation. I love the idea of being able to talk to children at whatever age. I think there are certainly age appropriate ways to have this conversation. And I think part of that conversation begins with even asking your children, regardless of ages, how do you know what you know? What did mom and dad or what did your family teach you about what you know about a thing? If it's something as minor as enjoying a certain food, or if you enjoy going to certain places? How did you come to know those things? And then that our conversation can expand to, how do you know what you learn and believe about other people, and how you position yourself in that way? Do you think of yourself as inferior or superior to another human being?
That's very powerful.
How do you know what you know? Dr. Stevenson, I love how you put that, really diving into where this came from, where our beliefs came from, because it's easy to draw that line in so many aspects of our life. That makes a ton of sense to me. Thank you. Is it fair to say that some of the slights that are out there are unintentional or intentional? Does it matter? And can you maybe help give us some idea of some of the slights that we might be blind to?
Sure. So what I love about the conversations that are happening is we're getting to really start naming these incidents and naming these processes that are occurring. So in research in practice that I've participated in, we're sharpening these definitions in order to provide vocabulary for all of us to have a shared understanding of these incidents. So as you talk about these slights, right, we now use the term microaggressions, and there are different forms and types of microaggressions. One of those types being racial microaggressions, and they're defined as brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignities, whether intentional or otherwise, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative racial slights and insults toward people of color. So whether they're intentional or not, they do cause harm, they do accumulate. And for communities of color, specifically African Americans, we begin to see those effects in, for example, health disparities. We begin to see those effects in terms of mortality rates, birth mortality for African American women, and so on. So there is a direct consequence that Black Americans suffer from these slights, intentional or otherwise.
Dr. Tamara Stevenson of Westminster College, she's the Chief Diversity Officer. As always, I'm just so sad when we're limited by time. Promise us you're going to come back to the show very soon and continue this conversation.
Absolutely glad to do so. Thank you for having this conversation.
Thank you, Doctor. We're going to continue our coverage straight ahead with the man I just recently met through Twitter, through one of his tweets, and he's just amazing in my mind. And, you know, sports are central to the lives of Utah children and Utah parents. And straight ahead, the conversation with Coach Kamal Ahmed as we ask him more about this tweet. He says, the treatment of the African-American athlete is one of the biggest challenges for many within the state of Utah. I want to ask him how we can do more and how we can do better when he calls in live. It's 10:16. We're back after news, traffic, and weather.
Dave and Dujanovic.
This is how you do elections.
Listen to us, Tim and Amanda, for breaking updates all morning.
Then go in depth with Dave and Dujanovic.
Most important, cast your mail-in ballot. Rock the vote.
From home.
With KSL News Radio.
Here in Utah, we take education of our children very, very seriously. It's why it's always the top thing in political season. Everybody wants to talk about education in their plan. It makes a lot of sense because we love educating our kids. Well, have you thought about that 4-year-old? As they're getting ready to go into kindergarten, what are you doing to get them ready for school without overwhelming them, right? I mean, that's the balance we're trying to find. Well, let me tell you about WaterfordUpstart.org. This is an online at-home early education program. It's a nonprofit and it comes at no cost to the parents. So it's genuinely about teaching kids. And it only takes about 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Because if you've ever tried to get a 4-year-old to sit down and read and do lessons and projects, 15 minutes is about perfect for those 4-year-olds. So this program, this online curriculum is fun and adaptive. Give it a shot. Register that 4-year-old online today at WaterfordUpstart.org. It takes 8 minutes to do so, so it's just a blink of an eye. Get that 4-year-old registered today at WaterfordUpstart.org. success from the start.
Emergency traffic on KSL News Radio brought to you by Mountain America, your home for home loans. Good news on I-15 up in Clearfield. They finally cleared the crash. Unfortunately, you've got delays through all of Layton, starting up at Hillfield Road all the way up to 650 North, although that will start to clear out. Highway 89 still a mess because of construction between Antelope Drive and I-84. And in Utah County right now, a vehicle is on fire just south of the Pleasant Grove exit. Crews just arriving on scene now. A couple of right lanes blocked and a lot of smoke blowing across the freeway. I'm Andy Farnsworth in the KSL Traffic Center.
Call Reverse Freedom now, 801-921-HOME, or visit reversefreedom.com.
Race relations in Utah. In-depth coverage on KSL News Radio.
You can stream us right now at KSLNewsRadio.com and watch this very, very important conversation we're about to have. Also go to our KSL News Radio Facebook page. We are streaming it live there as well. You know, yesterday, Dave, you and I talked about the lack of diversity on Utah campuses, and I was just thrown off guard when we saw and talked about that study. 3 universities in Utah landed in the top 10 on a national survey of being the least diverse campuses in the country. One of the most diverse areas on campus, though, is the athletic program.
And this is something, Debbie, that I've seen firsthand for a number of years. I worked in the sports department at KSL for over a decade, and I realized just yesterday that my experience on college campuses was very, very diverse because I was always working with athletics, where you saw a lot of diversity. So we're going to jump in and talk to a former university football coach about what it was like to recruit players of color onto the campus and some of those challenges in trying to diversify these college campuses?
Kamal Ahmad is his name. And if it sounds familiar, we had him on the show very recently, and you may remember his viral video as he returned from violent protests in downtown Salt Lake on May 30th.
I'm just leaving the protest, and I have no idea what in the world was going on there. That wasn't about George Floyd. That wasn't about Black Lives Matter. That wasn't about racial equality in our country. That was about people who want to cause harm and conflict. And a bunch of people high, drunk. Wasn't peaceful protesters. Nothing peaceful about that crap, man.
That was so powerful. Coach, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Thank you for having me on.
It's great for you to join us again. And that was when I saw that tweet go out, I think it was a couple of days actually after those riots in downtown Salt Lake City. I'm like, I have to know more about Coach Kamal. And you joined us, and we're so glad you're back with us again. So you grew up in Oklahoma City, and you played football at the University of Kentucky, if I'm remembering your amazing resume correctly. But you spent the last decade or so in Utah. Why? Maybe it's been even longer than that. 14 years in Utah?
14 years. Yes, 14 years.
What is it that keeps you here, and what is that concerns you about race relations in Utah?
It's very ironic because what keeps me here is the great culture. I love the culture here. I love the atmosphere. I love the people. I love Utah. I just love it. And I really love the Salt Lake City area. My goodness, I fell in love with it 10 years ago, and there's no city like the Salt Lake City area. Some of the biggest challenges, if you talk to many of the African Americans here, it's not the police. We don't have police issues. It's race relations with coworkers, with other students. Those are the major issues here. It's not the police. It's our peers.
You came here to coach with Coach Ron McBride, Coach Mack at Weber State. So you've been involved in one of the most diverse parts of Utah, which is athletic departments in our universities. So many players of color come and get recruited to Utah. Can you give us a little bit of an idea? As a football coach, where recruiting is such a huge part of your job, what were you hearing from players that you were recruiting that maybe had some concerns about coming to Utah, which is predominantly white?
You know what's interesting? When you're paying for someone's college education, that doesn't seem to be the biggest factor, you know? And we had a lot to offer at Weber State when we were there. They had some really great programs with criminal justice, with nursing in particular, that really caught the eye of our recruits. Many went into the criminal justice program. So we sold them on what Weber State done well and what they were known for well. And we had a lot of success. We had 15 players from Oklahoma come to Utah. Of that, I want to say at least 10 were African-American. When Coach Ron McBride was there, the African numbers jumped dramatically, coaching-wise, player-wise. So he was very big on diversity, not just African-American, but Polynesian as well. So.
Kamal, you talked in a tweet, or you tweeted out that the treatment of the African American athlete is one of the biggest challenges for many within the state of Utah. What do you mean by that? And tell us how we can do better. I'm a big proponent of sports. My kids were in softball and baseball. How could I do better going forward as a parent?
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's fine. Go ahead.
So the biggest stereotypes of African Americans are within this state, in my opinion, are athletes, because that's who you see on TV every day. And I feel like there's not really a large African American community here. It's one of the few large cities in the United States where you don't have a solid African American community that's been there for decades. So this is like one of the few states where you don't have that. So naturally, you're going to get some stereotypes that come up. If you go around the United States, like when I read the Oklahoma City newspapers, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they talk about, when players talk about like coming to Utah to play, it's not good. And I'm not talking about from a competitive standpoint. I'm talking from a racial, hey, this slur was said, it needs to be addressed. And I feel like we need to do a better job just educating our within just our educational systems on Black history. Now, in saying that, when I first moved here, I tuned in to a certain radio station that I won't name, obviously not this one, but it's a famous sports station. And they were mocking Black athletes, the way they talk, the way they act. And I've never heard that in my life until I moved here. Like in the South, you would not dare have something like that. And it was wide open here. And I don't think it was out of like just people who were racist or prejudiced. I think it was people who just didn't know any better. And I truly believe that. And this happened consistently till I just stopped listening to it a couple of years ago. I couldn't do it anymore. So it's things like that.
Kamal Ahmad, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And I think you're an important voice in the community. We appreciate you taking the time to talk through so many of these issues where I personally feel a little bit like the water's over my head and I'm trying to tread water. So I appreciate you taking the time. I know I talked to one of my Black friends and he said, listen, I don't speak for all Blacks. So I know there's a pressure, when you feel like you're speaking for many, and we appreciate you taking that time to help.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Talk to you again soon, Kamal. Jazz player, jazz basketball icon Thurl Bailey has a podcast. It's incredible. I love it. I cannot stop listening to it. And he recently sat down with his brother, who was a police officer here in Salt Lake County for 25 years. What Saul says about growing up nervous around police to becoming an officer had me in tears. Dave and I want you to hear it, too, straight ahead.
In the Senate. A major airline has already banned some passengers for refusing to wear a mask. ABC's Alex Stone has more.
Now, Delta's CEO in a letter to employees saying Delta has already banned some passengers from future travel for refusing to wear masks on board. Ed Bastian saying it was in a handful of cases. Delta won't say exactly how many.
Coronavirus coverage every 30 minutes on KSL News Radio. A midday rally on Wall Street. Stocks open lower this morning on fears about the lasting economic impact of the pandemic, but have since regained those losses. Let's take a look at your money at this moment. The Dow is up, but only about 0.33%, 60 points here. The S&P 500 up by 6 points, and the NASDAQ is still flirting with that 10,000 mark, up 39 this hour. Coming up, could be a stormy day today, but more lightning and thunder than rain. We'll check your forecast. KSL News Time, 10:33.
We're at a moment in history when you want real confidence in your news.
We hope that's what KSL means to you.
Tim and Amanda here, the voices you hear mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Utah's all-day companion for news.
This is Joe Cordell with the domestic litigation firm Cordell & Cordell. If you're a man
and you need help with a family law matter, time may be of the essence. While most family law courts did not fully close due to the COVID virus, most slowed down dramatically, focusing primarily on emergency matters. The result, as you might predict, is a backlog of cases for courts to work through as they resume their normal schedules. So filing early may be advantageous. But don't just rush forward. First, be sure your goals are realistic, that the costs make sense. You likely have other questions. In other words, this means we should talk. You can meet with us by phone, video, or in person. Remember, Cordell & Cordell has years of experience helping guys just like you with issues just like these. After all, this is what we do.
Contact Cordell & Cordell to schedule an appointment with one of our firm's Salt Lake City area attorneys, a partner men can count on. Online at CordellCordell.com. Office in Midvale and Clearfield, 910 West Legacy Center Way, Suite 120, Midvale, Utah, 84047.
Utah Gives Back is presented by Select Health, and we're joined by Community Relations Manager for Select Health, Greg Reed. Also, Javier Alegre, who is the Executive Director for the Latino Behavioral Health Services. Javier, tell us a little about your organization.
Of course, Latino Behavioral Health is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're based in Salt Lake County. However, we do serve individuals across the state. We provide behavioral health services, which include mental health and substance abuse resources and support for individuals engaged or looking to engage in recovery. We are a community-driven organization. We are run by peers, which is our model, peers helping peers. Even though we are peers and the majority of our services are peer-driven, we do provide clinical services like therapy and counseling and peer support specialists and peer support services.
What changes, Javier, have you seen during this pandemic to your clientele?
When the pandemic started and we all went home, right, mid-March, March 15, it was very uncertain what was going to happen. Of course, our offices were open. We were seeing our clients and they were coming into the office, having their therapy sessions, their support sessions, the mentoring sessions. We also have support groups and classes available for individuals and their loved ones and family members who are normally the unspoken heroes of recovery stories, and they also need a tremendous amount of support. We were very uncertain what was going to happen, and of course we were all at all levels propelled to the virtual world where we started to explore how can we serve our clients virtually. They're trying to learn new ways to cope and learn and understand this new normal that it's yet to be defined.
For more information on Latino Behavioral Health Services and Javier's work there, please go to UtahGivesBack.com.
2020, a year of all years. We have so much to be grateful for. Our families, friends, neighbors, community, and the beautiful freedoms we've come to treasure, as well as those who have worked tirelessly to keep us safe. Our essential workers, military, law enforcement, firefighters, and more. During this year's America's Freedom Festival, we proudly honor you. The way we spend time together may be altered, but this is a time to remember our struggles, knowing we're united and resilient. For over 40 years, this festival celebrates our community, and this year is no different. This is my America. Enjoy music from some of your favorite artists of all stripes, while synchronized to the largest fireworks display to date in 3 locations: Lovell Edwards Stadium, Footprinter, and Orem Community Parks. This is an event for one and all. United, we stand. Visit americasfreedomfestival.org. Sponsored by KSL News Radio and TV, Provo City, Utah County, and New Skin.
It's still emergency traffic out there, so let's get the latest. Brought to you by Mountain America, your home for home loans. Of course, it's Andy Farnsworth to steer us around it.
And it's up in Davis-Weber County. We had the crash on I-15 in Clearfield that backed traffic all the way through Layton. The good news is that is now clear. The bad news is we still have the mess because of construction over on Highway 89. Northbound backed up from Antelope Drive all the way to I-84. Southbound delays a little bit better approaching I-84, but the delays continue beyond I-84 south all the way down to SR 193. We also had a vehicle fire on southbound I-15 in Pleasant Grove. The fire appears to be out, but emergency vehicles are still on the scene, and we have some southbound delays as you go past the Pleasant Grove exit. UDOT construction alert. I-15 will close in Layton for 3 nights this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. All lanes will close in both directions as early as 9 p.m. while crews demolish the Gentile Street Bridge. I'm Andy Farnsworth in the KSL Traffic Center.
Just a slight chance of isolated thunderstorms today. That'll keep our temperatures at 88. And right now in Salt Lake City, It is 78 degrees. At KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM and KSLNewsRadio.com. This is Utah's all-day companion for news.
Race relations in Utah, a special hour with David Dujanovic on KSL News Radio 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
We know you love the Utah Jazz. And if you love and you've paid attention to the Utah Jazz for a number of years, then you know his name and you love him too. It's Thurl Bailey.
Here comes Mr. Trouble. Thurl Bailey, North Carolina State. It's no good. The rebound is off to Bailey. Throws it up and throws it in. Bailey, what a mighty player he is.
What year did we pull that from? That's amazing.
1988, Chick Hearn. Are you kidding me? Classic.
He played 10 years with the Utah Jazz. He's now a broadcaster for the team. And lucky for you, Utah, Thurl also has a younger brother. His name is Saul. He's a retired police officer who spent 25 years on the force here in Salt Lake County.
And we're going to hear from retired Lieutenant Bailey from his Big Brothers podcast, Thurl Talk, about dealing with discrimination in his youth and the changes he's been pushing for during his 25 years as a police officer.
Now, we're going to take you on a journey here through Thurl's podcast and through Saul's stories. But I also recommend, absolutely urge you to listen to the entire interview on Thurl Talk, and you can download it off your favorite podcast platform because it is fascinating. It had me laughing at times, it had me crying at times, and it had me asking, how can I do better? Great insight from Saul, both inside and outside of his police force experience.
I got asked a few times early in my career, you find it hard being a police officer? You find it hard being a Black police officer and here in Utah? And I was like, you know what? My daddy had it hard, right? My mom had it hard. They were born in the 30s and grew up in the South. And grew up in the Jim Crow South and then moved to DC for a better life for their family, and then raised a family in the heart of the civil rights movement. So my daddy had it hard, right? My mom had it hard. So compared to some of the difficult things I've had to deal with over a 25-year law enforcement career, it pales in comparison to what they had to deal with.
That just hit me. It just hit me when he said that, when Lieutenant Saul Bailey, now retired, talking on his brother Thurl Bailey's podcast about how difficult it was for his mom and dad. And his first story in the podcast takes us back to Washington, D.C., where the Bailey brothers grew up, and they were playing basketball.
There was always this ominous feeling when the police came around or rolled up and down our street. But I also remember the relationship that I had with some of them. I remember when we got lights on the basketball court, which our mother helped get, so we could have a lighted basketball court till midnight at night. Yep, that would stay on till midnight, and then somehow somebody figured out how to wire the box where they stayed on until 6 a.m, so we could play ball until 3 a.m. I think the statute of limitations is up on that, so feel free to comment on that.
I'll say that for later.
But I remember vividly that 4 PG County cruisers would pull up to that park and park right in front of James Wilder's house, who was a 22-year veteran of the Baltimore City Police Department that we grew up with. And they'd park in front of his house. They'd get out in full uniform, and we'd be there playing ball. They'd pop the trunk, and anybody from the outside looking in thought, oh boy, trouble's coming. These guys would take off their blues, take off their duty belt, bring one radio and set it on the cement step, and jump in the game.
I love that. I love that story. It describes so well what we're talking about when it comes to community policing. That is the very definition of what community policing looks like.
When I heard him say that, looking back on his childhood, growing up in Washington, D.C., and when it looked like the cops were going to be doing, maybe making some arrests. In fact, they weren't. They were there to hop in the basketball game. I wonder how many police departments now in Utah really focus on that kind of community policing. Because I remember years ago when there was controversy about pulling the DARE program, the Drug Resistance Education Program, out of the 5th grade classrooms across the Wasatch Front. And my husband at the time had been a DARE officer, Dave, and the impact that wasn't measured when they talked about, well, does DARE really fight determine whether a kid uses drugs or doesn't use drugs in the future. I felt that the discussion that was lost was the impact and the positive impact that the DARE program had on the 5th graders in the classroom as they got to know a police officer, and the police officer almost more importantly, got to know them. And I found that years later, about 10 years later, when Chris and I were at Lagoon, and a group of, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 adults at that time walked up to us, and one of them said, "Are you Officer Chris? You were my DARE officer back 10 or 15." They remembered him.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, Deb. I do want to play the very last soundbite from Lieutenant Bailey as he described really what change looks like, because he's been on both sides, right? He's grown up as a Black American, and he's also served on the police department. So he says, you know what, it's not just a single issue. Listen to what
we
he
do better
says.
when we build that social capital, right, with the communities that we serve. Because let's be clear, if you're whether you're in a small police department or a major metropolitan police department, at some point in time, if you do this as long as I have, or the police department's been around for a while, you are going to have a critical incident. That is just a fact of life. That is whether it is a shooting, it is a traffic accident, whatever, right? But how that incident, and whether the police were right or wrong or in the middle or they're still trying to figure it out, but how the community is going to react to that is based on whatever social capital you already had built in before that incident happened.
That's right.
And if your agency has a history of mistreating that particular community, regardless of what that critical incident is, I'm sorry, you are not going to get the benefit of the doubt because you haven't earned it.
Powerful words, and hearing it from someone that has served in our community, I take that as gospel.
I'm going to go re-listen to that podcast on my way home. That's Thurl Talk. Thurl Bailey, of course, former jazzman, and his brother, Saul Bailey, who retired after 25 years of police work in Salt Lake County. Straight ahead, we're going to have an honest discussion with one of our colleagues here, the reporter for the Deseret News, Jason Lee. He's going to join us on our Facebook Live as well as on the line here. And I want to ask him, when I think in my head, hey, I am not biased, does that mean I am not biased? I know Jason's going to give us an honest answer so we can continue to have our honest conversations throughout the day and at the dinner table tonight. It's 10:46 and we're back after news, traffic, and weather.
Dave and Dujanovic.
This is how you do elections.
Listen to us, Tim and Amanda, for breaking updates all morning.
Then go in depth with Dave and Dujanovic.
Most important, cast your mail-in ballot. Rock the vote.
From home.
With KSL News Radio.
Today, we join Select Health to bring you the stories of Utah nonprofits and organizations that are making a difference with your health, of course, during this challenging time. Utah Gives Back is presented by Select Health, and Greg Reed is with us, Community Relations Manager for Select Health. And now we'd like to introduce you to Sarah Leatham, who is the Healthy Kids Program Director for Health Policy Project. Sarah, let's talk a little bit about how you're staying safe during the pandemic while also remaining a community resource.
Currently, our office is closed for in-person appointments, but we're fully equipped with remote enrollment options. So that includes, phone assistance, screen sharing capabilities, video chatting. Even if folks don't have access to a computer or an internet connection, even with a cell phone, we can still walk through the application, sign everything that we would need, walk them through that eligibility process.
Sarah, with so much job loss that's happening because of the pandemic, many have lost their health insurance. Is this a special enrollment period?
Yes. If you have recently lost your employment and you had your health insurance through an employer, employer-sponsored insurance, you'd qualify for a special enrollment period. So whether you're thinking about Medicaid or CHIP for your kids, or even the marketplace, there are a lot of options for coverage right now for families.
Tell our listeners how they, as individuals or organizations that may want to help, can help you.
Yeah, we have many community partners that we work with, and it really takes our partners being engaged and knowing how important coverage is, especially in times like now for individuals and families. So if there are organizations, community organizations, direct service, or even food pantries or grocery stores, anywhere that people are still occupying spaces right now, if you'd like to get connected with us, you can reach out to me or UHPP.
For more information, just go to utahgivesback.com.
I have spent almost 7 years working closely with my Lieutenant Governor, Spencer Cox. He is a proven leader and a true conservative who is deeply committed to our state and its future. I trust his judgment and vision, especially in challenging times. This recovery is too important to leave to chance. Spencer helped me lead our economy into the most prosperous period in state history. I trust him to do it again. Vote for Spencer Cox to be Utah's next governor.
Paid for by Cox for Governor.
So many years now, our family has relied on Zero Res. We just absolutely count on them. When we see that it's time for our carpets to be cleaned, we don't think about anybody else. We make no hesitation. We just call Zero Res. And while we've all been cooped up in our homes over the last little while, our houses have taken a little more than the normal beating. It is the perfect time to call Zero Res. First of all, you want a clean home. And while we're trying to remain healthy and safe and comfortable in our homes, bringing the people of Zero Res in to take care of things can really, really add not only to the way things look, but the way it feels. It feels so much better to have a clean home. And they are doing everything possible to make sure that they can take care of the cleaning right now. They've ramped up, and it's $33 per room. And when you book 3 rooms, you get a 4th room for free. Call 801-288-9376 or go online, Zero Res Carpet Cleaning.
Get news all day on the KSL News Radio app and on the app for radio.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Tim Hughes. First, fewer people are drawing unemployment benefits in Utah. The Department of Workforce Services released a weekly update this morning showing the total number of weekly claims fell nearly 4% last week. Second, Governor Gary Herbert's office tells KSL he will decide this afternoon whether to grant a request from Mayor Jenny Wilson to institute a mandatory mask-wearing policy in public. We'll break in immediately on KSL when the decision is announced. And third, the Supreme Court has ruled that the Trump administration can deport some people seeking asylum without allowing them to make their case to a federal judge. The High Court's 7-2 decision applies to people who fail their initial asylum screenings, making them eligible for quick deportation. High of 88 today, chance of thunder showers, and right now it is 78. Back to David Dujanovic on KSL News Radio.
Race relations in Utah. In-depth coverage on KSL News Radio.
All day long, we're focusing on a very, very important conversation that, frankly, I've never had. And I'm glad that I'm finally having it, and I'm having it with Dave, and I'm having it with you. Maybe it's uncomfortable to confront our biases, admit we have them. Maybe it's easier just not to talk about it. For whatever reason, I'm just tired of not having the honest discussion, and I'm grateful, Dave, that we've had so many amazing guests on to have this honest conversation with us. And now our very own colleague from the Deseret News, Jason Lee, is joining us as well.
Yes, and I think as uncomfortable as it is to have conversations outside of our comfort zone, it's equally as important to do so. And I think this is a step forward. I feel like a little more confidence in having conversations, but I also know this is not a silver bullet fix. This is not something that makes ginormous, huge strides with one conversation. This is a lifetime of conversations, and I think that's why I'm so excited to continue it with our colleague Jason Lee.
Good morning, Jason.
How are you guys doing this morning?
It's good to see you. We haven't seen you through in a while.
No, we don't get to come in very often.
Yeah.
I had a quick question. I was listening to you guys just before you brought me on. So, Debbie, why have you not had these kinds of conversations before now?
It's ridiculous. That is a great question. I don't know. This has been the most in-depth conversation I've ever had about race and relations in my lifetime. And I'm a journalist, and I'm almost ashamed to admit that, but I'm not necessarily afraid to talk about it. And I want to confront that. And it's, here's the thing, Jason, before the break, I asked myself a question in my head. If I say I'm not biased, does that mean I'm not biased? Talk to me about that in an honest way, because I don't feel like I'm biased.
Well, I think we all have biases, right? I mean, look, I would hate to say that I would love to say that I don't have any, but I know that that's not true. And so we have to be cognizant of them, recognize them, and then kind of learn how it manifests itself. So if you can make adjustments in the way it comes out to other people, where you are respectful, and because we all recognize we make mistakes sometimes, right? And if you have a friend who's a person of color, or if you're a guy and you have a female friend, and sometimes we say, Dave, I'm sure we've all had this experience where we said something that was inadvertently misogynist.
Yeah.
So as long as they understand where your heart is and you ask for help, then you can make the adjustment and hopefully become better from it.
Jason Lee is joining us now. Jason, you and I know each other from the sports world, where I first met you. And I'd been working in sports for the better part of a decade. And I've got a question for you, and I hope this is where you can shed some light. So most of my career was spent in locker rooms and talking to players. And often when you look at the locker rooms, very diverse, lots of people of color. I never delved into race relations because it was certainly uncomfortable. I didn't really feel comfortable having that conversation. Did I miss an opportunity to talk to athletes about racial injustices, or would that have put athletes, do you think, in uncomfortable situations where they're like, listen, I just want to talk about the ball game and you want to talk about social issues in the world? And I think that's where I don't know where I land. Did I miss an opportunity, or was it appropriate to say, listen, let's just keep it focused on a ball game?
I would suggest that that would be determined on the relationship you have with that individual player, because some players are more interested in talking, or maybe interested in talking about things other than just the game. And if you have a relationship with them over time, then they probably wouldn't have a problem having that discussion with you. And I think, so what I would suggest to anyone, but it doesn't matter what particular race you happen to be, if you want to learn, be willing to ask your friends, your acquaintances, if they would be willing to have these kinds of conversations with you. That's how we become more informed, more educated, and hopefully more understanding of people different from ourselves. And I think as a Black person, I don't really have the luxury of not having to have hard conversations sometimes. So I don't have the reluctance or the fear of having the conversation. So I'm pretty willing to do so. And I've known both of you for a few years now. So I would like to think that if you wanted to, you could come over to me and say, can we go someplace for a couple of minutes and have a chat? Because I would do that with you. If you have friends like that, if you have acquaintances like that, if you have work friends like that, take those opportunities, because that'll help you. And then you'll have less reluctance. You'll have less anxiety about it. And hopefully it'll help you in your circle when other people have similar kinds of circumstances.
And Jason, you asked me off the top just a few minutes ago when we started this discussion, you said, why haven't you had this conversation? And I'm really at a loss, and I'm disappointed in myself, but I am confident now. And I do believe in that we can start today. I can start today. And now I do feel very comfortable talking to you. I trust your work as a journalist. I enjoy our conversations that we've had as my work colleague and a friend. How can I launch into those conversations with other friends? And how can I tell my kids? What can I teach my kids about this?
I wonder, and again, kids are a little different than us because sometimes they have a better sense of, they don't have the, political correctness. They'll just ask, these are their friends. They'll just go out and just say it, And so maybe in a lot of cases, they may be willing to have them more so than we will. But if you have adults or anyone for that matter, if you just ask as sincerely and you're genuine in your curiosity and you, again, trying to learn, not be, I think if people understand where you're coming from, if they realize it's from a good place, they will be willing to have these conversations with you to help you, and hopefully you'll become more enlightened, and each of you will be enriched by the experience.
Jason, what you just said really resonated with me, and it really ties into what Saul Bailey, retired lieutenant in the police force here in Utah, had talked about. He said building up social capital is so important for police officers, so that when something does go down, that you almost immediately get that benefit of the doubt. And then as I was listening to you describe things, that's kind of what I was thinking, is we need to be able to build up some social capital and have conversations so that when something major does happen, that we can communicate honestly and fairly, and where we think the best of each other versus just immediately taking offense when anything is said.
That's absolutely right, Dave. I mean, if you have a relationship, if you build, like you said, that capital, they call it political capital in politics, when you've done enough that you have your bona fides, so people know that this person is legitimate. If you do that in your own circles, you'll have that same kind of capital. It'll give you the opportunity to be able to ask tough questions sometimes. And even if you make a mistake, it won't be taken in such a way that you can't continue the conversation and have it be constructive.
Jason Lee, our colleague of the Deseret News, thank you so much. I know you're going to be with our other colleagues here at KSL News Radio after you get off of our show here. But thank you so much for giving us your perspective. It's always meant so much to both Dave and I, and it's good to see you here.
Good to see you. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk again soon. Dave, thank you as well for, having this honest conversation with me. I've really learned a lot.
Yes, a great conversation. Glad we had it. And I'm grateful for those guests that joined us today. And really, it almost felt compassionate to white hosts having a conversation about race relations. And they were very magnanimous in walking us through the important conversation that we just had. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us and for your thoughts. And we look forward to continuing this conversation, not just today, but really for the rest of ever, right? This is what we got to do. We got to continue having these conversations.
Dave and Dujanovic.
These are the guys you've made into a new daytime habit.
After Utah's morning news, come back at 9 for Conversation with Dave and Dujanovic.
We're all part of KSL News Radio,
Utah's all-day companion for news.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City.
Mike Wyatt with KSL's top stories this half hour. Election results might end up trickling in very slowly on Tuesday night. KSL News Radio's John Wojcik reports that's because state lawmakers added a provision that restricts any release of election results until 10 p.m. on Election Day.
That's at least 2 hours after the polls close at 8 o'clock. According to UtahPolicy.com, the purpose of the bill is to give voters an extra day to send in their votes. Previously, mail-in ballots had to be postmarked the day before Election Day.
Also new this year, election officials are planning to quarantine ballots for 24 hours after they come in to prevent possible exposure to the coronavirus. And our top national story from ABC News, the worst economic numbers caused by the pandemic could still be yet to come. Here's ABC's Brian Clark.
The U.S. economy contracted by 5% in the first quarter of the year, and with the coronavirus pandemic only having a major impact in 2 weeks of that 3-month period, economists believe this quarter, which ends next week, will feature the biggest drop on record.
But fewer Utahns are drawing unemployment benefits this week. The Department of Workforce Services says the number of weekly claims fell almost 4%. However, the number of first-time claims actually ticked up a little bit. Nationally, 50 million people applied for unemployment benefits since the pandemic began. Wall Street is fighting its way back. Stocks were down on the opening bell this morning, but they've regained a lot of those losses, at least to a point where we're in the green. Looks like the Dow is up 47 points. The S&P 500 is up 5, and the NASDAQ has gained 25. Coming up, we might see a storm or two today. KSL weather is next, and KSL News Time is 11:02.
We make it easy to catch news in the morning.
Listen on your computer at KSLNewsRadio.com.
And on your phone on the KSL News Radio app.
And always at 102.7 FM in the car for KSL News Radio.
Utah's all-day companion for news.
Hi guys, it's Andrew with Wasatch Medical Clinic. Are you struggling with ED? Well, I have great news. We can now fix the problem without any medication, injections, or surgery. Our advanced form of wave therapy is clinically proven to regrow blood vessels and restore spontaneity in the bedroom. We can do so quickly, affordably, and with zero side effects.
Hi, my name is Rich, and I'm an actual patient. I recently overcame my skepticism and started treatments last week. I was astonished to see instant results. These treatments work, and the increase in blood flow was immediate. My only regret is not starting sooner.
If you're struggling with ED and want a long-lasting fix, call in the next 2 minutes and we'll give you the medical assessment and ultrasound totally free. We'll also give you a special gift that produces instant results to improve your intimacy. That's a $400 value, totally free. Put a stop to your ED. Call 801-901-8000. That's 801-901-8000. Call Wasatch Medical right now to claim that offer. 801-901-8000.
Utah Travel Adventure starts in your own backyard with Cedar City. While it's true, Cedar City's home of the famous Shakespeare Festival, now it's time to let wonder be your guide. Discover another side of this cool southern Utah town. Cedar City is wonderful and loaded with adventure. From beautiful places like Bryan Head Resort's miles of chairlift rides, mini zip lines, mountain biking, and alpine slides. Or add the cool Alpine Cedar Breaks National Monument to your bucket list. Enrobed in a circle of painted cliffs, 150 species of wildflowers, hiking trails, and spectacular views. Nearby is Bryce and Kolob Canyons just off I-15. Plus, Cedar City has miles of new downhill and flow trails for riding. Now, if four-wheel adventures are your scene, Cedar City has over 400 miles of socially distanced OHV trails. Pack up your bikes, hiking shoes, ATVs, and fishing poles, because Cedar City isn't just a place for first-class theater. Here, you're the star of your own adventure. Plan your trip today. Let wonder be your guide at visitcedarcity.com.
With all that's going on in the world and in the stock market, there's no better time to align yourself with a local, trusted financial partner. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth. We are a full-service, privately owned firm with an A-plus BBB rating. Our goals are aligned with yours because we're paid a low flat fee that is established up front and is typically around only 1% per year. And unlike most advisors, our advice isn't conflicted by limited product selection or strong biases. Full service means we do most everything financial: investment management, insurance, tax, Social Security and income planning, as well as legal needs such as wills and trusts. Our fiduciary advisors will take the time to get to know you and your situation. Call Trajan Wealth today and see what positive impact we can make in your life. Call us 801-899-7600. 801-899-7600.
Investment advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth and SEC registered investment advisor.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Mountain America, your home for home loans. Let's check in with Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Construction causing a bit of a nightmare with delays in Davis County. This is on Highway 89, both directions between Layton and South Weber. We also have a vehicle fire. This is in Utah County, southbound I-15 at Pleasant Grove Boulevard. They do have it moved to the right shoulder. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, just a chance of an isolated thunderstorm today. 88 degrees, some clearing, and 89 tomorrow. Partly sunny and low 90s over the weekend. It's 80 degrees right now at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. This is Utah's all-day companion for news.
Welcome, everyone, to a special edition of Inside Sources as we talk race relations in Utah. I am Boyd Matheson, opinion editor at the Deseret News. It is great to be with you. As always, it's the fastest 60 minutes of radio, and we're going to fill it today. And we are going to do, as we always try to do, to slow things down just a little bit, help you divide the rage from the reason, elevate the conversation, connect the dots, and help it all make sense. And so we're going to continue our coverage here. So we're going to get right at it as we go. You can always join us on our Utah Community Credit Union KSL text line, 57500. Weigh in with your thoughts, your ideas as we try to elevate the conversation around race today. Very pleased right off the bat to be joined by former Representative Mia Love. current CNN contributor, and I think you were the first Republican to ever join the Black Congressional Caucus. Mia, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate being on, Boyd. Thank you.
So as we look at this important topic of race, you and I had a conversation over the weekend. Doug Wilkes from the Deseret News was writing his piece inside the newsroom, and a lot of the chatter over the weekend was about the different news organizations changing the capitalization of Black, lowercase b to an uppercase b. And I was able to track you down. I think you were on a Father's Day hike with your husband, Jason.
Yeah.
But I asked you, what do you think about that? What's the issue there?
I believe my first response was we have much bigger problems in capitalization. When I think about the question that you asked, I think about, when a prejudiced police officer is unnecessarily putting you in handcuffs, or if you're just not worried about AP style guides. When your family is trapped in poverty programs, big social programs, and no way of getting out, you don't have time to consult politically correctness or spell check. You're just doing everything you can to put food on the table and have your children dream of a better tomorrow. And I think that's the most difficult thing. One of the things that I've learned, I started painting a little bit, is that you can't paint what you don't see, what you don't know. And these young children, if they don't see, if they don't know, how will they know what direction to go into? How will they know what direction to take and what decisions to make to get them there? And so we have to, all of us, I'm not just talking about Black families, I'm talking about Americans. You have to stop being indifferent about what's going on with our fellow Americans. We have to start painting a vision of a better tomorrow, a better America. If we don't do that, our children will never see their way through this cloud. It's what I call it a cloud of confusion.
Yeah, there is a lot of confusion. There's a lot of uncertainty out there, and I love that visual of you can't paint what you can't see. And I think that's true, because we can't be indifferent anymore. We need to have a different kind of conversation. And you've experienced this in different ways throughout your life, from growing up to being elected to Congress. Tell us some of the early things. I know there were some important lessons to you as it related to race early on for you.
Yeah. So I've had lessons, obviously, growing up. In high school myself, I've had lessons watching my children grow up. I've had lessons watching my brother. One particular one was when I was a swim teacher in high school, and I was teaching these young kids, and there was this young man in particular who was just so sweet, really was tough to work with at the beginning, but learned to trust me and learned to put his head in the water. And we had one day left of class, and he just gave me a hug, and he says, I love you. And I said, oh, that's so sweet. He's like, no matter what my parents say about you, I love you. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He says, well, they say that all brown people are bad people. And so I looked at them and I said, show me where they are. And he pointed to them, and I waved hi. And I just thought to myself, here's a young man who there was a narrative that was put in his mind. And, some of these things are taught. It's just that type is taught, but they can also be untaught.
Yeah.
They can also be untaught by really good experiences and making sure that you treat people with kindness and respect. So I was really happy that I was able to have a portion of his life so that he can know that what his parents were saying wasn't necessarily true.
Oh, that's so important. And that really leads me to the next thing I want to get to. You've experienced all the realms of politics, from great victories to huge stages, big speeches, to defeats and challenges and misunderstandings and all of that. But I want to get to this idea of what is the right conversation. And again, you were the first Republican to join the Congressional Black Caucus. And I know there were a lot of things that you learned there, some things that they were doing well, some things that they were missing. But what is the right conversation? What should we be talking about?
Well, first of all, Boyd, you and I have talked about this at length. First of all, the right conversation is making sure that you are taking all of the personal gains out of it. In other words, there are always conversations that you can have that will help you get a leg up in politics. What I mean by that is that the worst politicians are the ones that lie because they make promises that they never intend on keeping. So you want to make sure that you're having conversations with people that open the door so that you are not given false choices. They say these are our choices. It's not A or B. It's not going to be either you take the things I promise you or you leave them. I've learned that in so many ways, whether it's the environment, right? It's not energy production or loss of your environment. You could actually have both and get rid of those false choices. One of the things I want to say is just because you're having a conversation about race, it doesn't mean that you are that you're stating that you're one way or the other. You're just at least letting people know that you're willing to have the conversation. I'm willing to have a conversation with my son. It's uncomfortable, but I'm willing to have a conversation with my son because he's going to grow up. He's right into the park. I need to tell him that there are people that are out there, not all of them, but there are people that are out there that have a grudge that that you have to be careful of, and this is how you behave. And also on the other side, you may be angry about what's happening to the people around you. There is a certain dignity and there's a certain respect that you have for yourself, that you are not going to be destructive. You are not going to defecate on a cop car. You will not stoop below what your mom, your great-grandparents, all of the people that have sacrificed to get you to where you are.
Oh, fantastic. Mia Love, always appreciate our conversations as a real friend, as a great leader out there, and especially as it comes to this important issue of race. I know this is just the end of the beginning of this conversation. We have a long way to go in the state and in the country, but I always appreciate your perspective and your leadership on this. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Boyd.
All right, that's Representative Mia Love. We're going to continue our conversation on race. We'll be joined by my conversation with Teresa Deer, board member from the NAACP, and Elder Jack Gerard of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, next on KSL's special coverage, Race Relations in Utah. Stay with us.
The Attorney General advises every agency of state government and has the power to investigate or prosecute anyone. I'm David Levitt, candidate for Attorney General, and I believe that kind of unfettered power demands the philosophy that just because you can doesn't mean you should. Sean Reyes sees it differently. He took $50,000 from known criminals and spoke at their Christmas party. $125,000 in dark money, and we'll never know where that came from. $50,000 from a brine shrimp company? Did it get something from the Attorney General? He spent $60,000 of campaign funds at a celebrity event and called it Law Day. He treats his power like a private money trough rather than a public trust. It is all legal, but it shouldn't be. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Let's not give him a third term. It's time to elect an Attorney General who values ethics, transparency, and accountability. As Attorney General, that's just what I'll do. Learn more at davidlevitt.com. I'm David Levitt. I approve this message.
Simple mobility. 2 words that most people take for granted. But when you have a family member in a wheelchair, mobility can be anything but simple. Life comes with all sorts of challenges. Worrying about reliable, affordable transportation shouldn't be one of them. Well, now mobility, affordability, and reliability all come together with Simple Mobility Vans. Low-mileage vans with brand-new ADA-compliant wheelchair conversions, rigorously inspected, and the cost is less than half of what a brand-new wheelchair van sells for. And they'll deliver your van free of charge anywhere in the continental United States. Simple mobility can be an incredible reality without breaking your bank. Think of the things you can now go do and see. It's life-changing. Learn how Simple Mobility Vans make transportation and wheelchair access easier and more affordable than you ever thought possible, while never compromising quality. Visit GetMyVan.com. That's GetMyVan.com. Simple Mobility Vans.
Guys, June is Men's Health Month. It's time to pay attention to your health and address those medical issues or conditions you've been putting off. Universal Men's Clinic wants you to know that they can improve the quality of life for most men suffering from low testosterone or ED. Healthy levels of testosterone can help improve your overall health and result in increased energy, muscle development, and better sleep. If you'd like to discuss the benefits of testosterone or ED treatment, Universal Men's Clinic encourages you to make an appointment. They make it easy and convenient. Choose an in-person or telemedicine consultation to receive their renowned personalized medical care. In celebration of Men's Health Month, Universal Men's Clinic will give you 75% off of your office visit and a free testosterone test. Make an appointment today, and your office visit will only be $49. Call Universal Men's Clinic at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit universalmensclinic.com.
We've told you for a long time that our friends at Utah Community Credit Union have so many ways to make your life easier, but we'd like to introduce you to something new called Card App. It's a smartphone technology that unlocks the power of your UCCU credit card or debit card and puts it in the palm of your hand.
Have you ever had your card lost or stolen? Card App makes it so easy. You just pause or even cancel your card instantly right from your phone, and just as easily you can turn your card back on if you find it again.
So you can avoid the hassle of dealing with phone calls about suspicious activity on your account or the possibility of your card not working when you actually need to use it.
It also works easily with both Apple Pay and Google Pay. It even gives you insights to your spending. It gives you this graphical view of your spending by category.
You'll get unique alerts for every debit and credit card on your account and help on your children's debit cards as well, just to make it a little easier for them to make wise purchase decisions.
Go online to uccu.com or just download the Card App.
UCCU, you're going to love where you bank.
Race relations in Utah. In-depth coverage on KSL News Radio.
And we have a critical conversation to have today as things continue to evolve here in the state of Utah and around the country. And we have these important, crucial conversations. Today, we want to get right into it. Earlier on medium.com, a very powerful editorial was released by leaders of the NAACP and President Russell M. Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a real call to the nation in terms of what can be done. I encourage you to go check that out on medium.com. It was interesting. I was actually on an interview with Newsmax earlier, and we were talking about some of the things that have been going on. When I was asked, so where do we go? There's a lot of political divide. There's a lot of things going on. The first thing I think we all have to remember is that if you want to bridge a divide, you do not do that by driving the wedge of division deeper. You have to remove it. And the only way you remove it is by going from friendship to partnership and cooperation and action. And that's the real key. And I was able to share with them this wonderful thing that happens not in front of a bank of TV cameras or a bunch of microphones for political purposes. It's the hard work and heavy lifting of friendship and partnership that most people don't hear about, don't see. And there's one that I want to talk specifically about today. So I'm going to invite in to the conversation here two extraordinary individuals. Teresa Deer, many of you from the show know she visits us regularly and elevates our thinking. She is a board member of the NAACP as well as a human resource consultant doing all kinds of great things, regularly writes for Deseret.com. We're also joined by Elder Jack Gerard of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And welcome to both of you today.
Well, thank you, boys. It's good to be with you.
One of the fascinating components, watching this friendship develop between one of the legends in civil rights work, Amos Brown, one of the last students of Dr. Martin Luther King, and President Russell M. Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ. Tell us a little bit how you've observed that.
So it has been heartwarming and amazing to watch. It has clearly been God's divine hand bringing these two organizations together. What I witnessed on the outside looking in and in the inside, these are two organizations that are authentically committed to working together on the challenges that face this country and even this world. There is open, transparent, and honest dialogue about the history, about the context, and a path forward. One thing that Derek Johnson, the president of the NAACP, said to us before we embarked on this relationship, he said, you always build and create friends before you need them. When we begin to think about our relationship with the church, it absolutely made sense. And lo and behold, we have just partnered on some amazing collaborations and initiatives that impact the world, of which we're both very, very proud of.
Oh, that's fantastic. And Elder Gerard, let me turn to you. You've been part of the hard work and heavy lifting. Tell us a little bit about one specific project regarding the self-reliance training this training that has gone into inner cities, minority communities, talking about self-reliance, financial understanding and education, entrepreneurship. Tell us a little bit about that partnership between the church and the NAACP.
Well, Boyd, it's been a wonderful partnership, and a lot of thanks goes to Teresa Deer. Teresa, always good to be on with you.
Of course.
You mentioned something early on, Boyd, that I think is very important here. As you talked about that a lot of this work has to be done, but it's really done almost quietly, day by day, one by one. Teresa, her team, Amos Brown, as she mentioned, Chairman Russell, President Derek Johnson, the whole leadership of the NAACP, collaboration or partnership started just 2 short years ago. We have come light years in not only understanding mutual respect, which has grown into love and a true partnership, as Teresa mentioned, but it began with commonality where we found an area we could work together on. You talk about self-reliance. We've taken some of the good work we've done as a church for many years, and in partnership with the NAACP, they've identified some areas where some of our resource might be of assistance. We started some programs in San Francisco, Chicago, where Teresa's from. Now we've moved into Indiana, Georgia, and elsewhere. And these self-reliance programs are very similar to what we do within the church, but Teresa has been remarkable in helping us prepare materials so they suit the various communities around the country. And by doing so, we've had, I think, 4 graduating classes now, but it's been a remarkable success, and it takes a lot of day-to-day work as we really come together. And as Teresa mentioned, a lot of this not only through divine intervention, but it's focused on Jesus Christ and our shared understanding and knowledge that we're children of a loving Heavenly Father. And that serves as the foundation for us to continue to work together and build bridges of understanding.
Yeah, and those
Absolutely.
and those results, real results. To me, that's the real exciting part of this. Teresa, I want you to respond. I mentioned as we started this segment this powerful op-ed. It's on medium.com. And I want you to react to this phrase because I think this just encompasses the results that are being driven. They said prejudice, hate, and discrimination are learned. Thus, we call on parents, family members, and teachers to be the first line of defense. Teaching children to love all, to find the good in others is more crucial than ever. Oneness is not sameness in America. We must all learn to value the differences.
That's powerful, and obviously, I agree with that 100%. It is incumbent upon us as leaders, as parents, academicians, teachers, anyone who has a relationship or influence with others to begin to, I like the word that you use, Boyd, having a critical conversation. And I would take that to the next level and say have a courageous, candid conversation. Because people can talk about diversity and inclusion, but as I said in my article, diversity and inclusion is different from racism. And, but maybe that's where people start. They start by talking about diversity and inclusion, and then they talk about racism. But in order to appreciate why we need to talk about diversity and inclusion, we have to talk about racism. But it's so important for us to talk to those who are going to inherit this country with all of its love and all of its friendship and all of its capacity to heal and do good. But also with those hurts and with those wounds, we must have a conversation and not back away from it.
Yes.
If we believe that we are responsible for the principles and tenets of Jesus Christ, then Jesus Christ would never step away from hurt, from wounds, from harm. He would step in and with a loving, patient, kind-hearted spirit, sit down and have the conversation. So invite family, invite friends, church members, pastors, leaders, evangelists, have the conversation, start somewhere.
That's right.
But let's start it together.
Yes, and start it today, I think, is the real key to the equation there. Elder Gerard, we have just a minute left. As you've witnessed and really watched this blossoming relationship, I want you to respond. This was from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said, I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. How are you seeing that final word play out?
I think Teresa said it very well. I just point, you read a very important passage in that op-ed. There's one more I draw the audience attention to, where it reminds us that the solutions to this doesn't come from government or law enforcement alone.
Right.
And that goes to the heart of your question. It comes back to each one of us as individuals. We need to do a little self-assessment. Then we find the common bond, the common interest. We go arm in arm. We find opportunities to understand, and then we're able to deal with the challenges of our day, because the only label we should focus on is we're children of a loving God. And as Teresa said, we can be different, but at the same time, we focus on how do we truly love our fellow man. That's where it begins with each one of us. We're grateful to NAACP. We've got the great start of a long-standing relationship to do much good for all mankind.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
That is the what
Amen.
it's really all about. Appreciate both of you joining us today. Teresa Deer and Elder Jack Gerard from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And thanks to all of you.
When the state faces challenges, Utahns always step up. KSL News Radio and Select Health want to inform you on how to better support local nonprofits, donating to schools and shelters, or even just checking in on a neighbor. Utah always gives back. Listen June 25th as we tell inspiring stories of how Utahns give back and talk to organizations in need. Utah Gives Back. From Select Health and your all-day companion for news, KSL News Radio.
Liberty Mutual Insurance Company helps you customize your home insurance so you only pay for what you need. Unlike things you paid for you didn't need, like the Vacnado 2000. A Wi-Fi connected vacuum that uploads Dust Bunny data to the cloud for real-time optimization. Whatever that means. But really, it's just a very expensive doggy chew toy. With Liberty Mutual, get customized home insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
I've always wanted to learn another language, so I decided to give Babbel a try, and I really like the teaching method of the app. I started with the beginner lesson on Babbel, and soon you're putting words into a conversation. Each lesson takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and they're all really different, which keeps things interesting. I can't wait to use my Spanish skills in real life. Dos cervezas, por favor.
Now try Babbel free. Just go to Babbel.com and start learning a new language today. That's BABBEL.com.
11:30 now at KSL News Radio. I'm Nick Wyatt with KSL's top stories this half hour. We're hearing sound from a rally in Frankfort, Kentucky today, calling for arrests in the shooting death of EMT Breonna Taylor. Taylor was killed by police in Louisville, executing a no-knock warrant now banned in the city. She was shot 8 times by the officers during a narcotics investigation, but no drugs were found inside the home. Louisville Metro Police have fired one officer involved, saying he showed an extreme indifference to the value of human life. And police officers here in Utah will get more training on bias and interacting with the public. KSL News Radio's Mary Richards has those details.
It is proposed that each police officer in Utah get 30 more hours of additional training in some areas after what's been happening nationally. And that includes courses on implicit bias and procedural justice. That means the way police treat people while doing their jobs. The director of Post tells the Deseret News he hopes these more hours of training will develop muscle memory for officers and increase more trust from the public. Mary Richards, KSL News Radio.
And Governor Gary Herbert is expected to make an announcement regarding Salt Lake County's request to mandate face masks in public. Herbert said yesterday he probably would approve it, and we've been told the governor will speak or issue a statement to that effect at some point today. Whenever that happens, we'll be sure to break in and let you know right here on KSL News Radio. And coronavirus coverage every 30 minutes here on KSL News Radio as well. And taking a look at the markets, looks like we're still in the green, not by much, but the Dow has put up 47 points, sitting at 25,482. The S&P 500 is up 5, and it looks like the NASDAQ has gained 23. Coming up, storms are possible today. KSL weather is next, and KSL News Time is 11:32.
When you ask Alexa to play KSL, you get news. Sure.
So call us up in the morning.
You're also going to get years of news experience.
Familiar voices and a place of belonging.
KSL News Radio, Utah's all-day companion for news.
One of the things with running is I want to enjoy
the run, but I never made it very far because the arches in my feet just killed me. So when I got to the end of my rope and I said, I have to do something to get rid of the pain, and a couple of people recommended the Good Feet store to me. I loved how I could go in and get a free personalized arch support fitting. They put that time, that work, that effort into helping you find the right arch supports. And you can walk around the store with these in your shoes and try them out before you purchase them. So after I got my arch supports, the arches at my feet stopped hurting and the pain instantly, literally instantly went away. So if you have pain, go. Find a Good Feet store and go. There is an answer. Find the simple solution that will get rid of your pain. I'm Rondi, and that's my Good Feet story.
See how Good Feet arch supports work for you before you buy with a free fitting at the Good Feet store.
You'll find America's arch support experts in Farmington, Riverton, and Sandy. Call 1-800-NEW-FEET or visit goodfeetnw.com.
Kathy, all I can say is wow.
Wow, what, Doug?
Summer, Kathy. It's here.
Doug, it happens every year.
Well, that's so folks can prepare for it.
Stop throwing your money out the window.
Start enjoying the comfort you deserve.
Call America's #1 remodeler, Window World.
Get the job done right.
Or get a new front door.
You got it, Kathy. Get the W. Enjoy the wow.
Wow. Call 801-281-8111.
Or visit us online at windowworldutah.com.
Window World. Simply the best for less.
And that's no baloney.
Go ductless and find your comfort zone with a revolutionary day and night constant comfort ductless home cooling and heating system, and turn hard to cool and heat rooms into year-round comfort zones. Day and night ductless systems are a simple upgrade and far more efficient than baseboards and wall heaters, saving you up to 50% on your energy costs. Ask your HVAC professional for day and night, or find a nearby day and night home comfort dealer at dayandnightcomfort.com. The difference is day and night.
Summer is here. Maybe it's time for a little road trip. How about something adventurous, outdoors, and with the weather heating up, something cool like the Swiss Alps? No, silly, not on a plane across the world, but right in your own backyard. Yeah, jump in the car and head up the canyon to Zermatt, Utah Resort and Spa. Swiss-inspired and safe travel approved. The staff at Zermatt, Utah works diligently to help ensure your safety. Zermatt, Utah Resort and Spa is known for crisp, cool mountain air and plenty of amenities for family fun, including an 18-hole mini golf course, large indoor and outdoor pool, tennis, volleyball, and tons of mountain sport fun like hiking, biking, razor riding, and boating. Zermatt, Utah offers 22 different luxurious room types, a full-service spa, a barbecue restaurant, an authentic European bakery, and a pub. Everyone deserves a mountain getaway. Visit ZermattResort.com to plan your Swiss-inspired adventure today. That's ZermattResort.com. Auf Wiedersehen.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Mountain America, your home for home loans, and Ricky Mee's Drive.
Well, we do have delays that continue due to road work both directions of Highway 89 between Layton and I-84 at the junction there in South Weber. Also, a new crash for Weber County drivers. This is eastbound Riverdale Road at the I-15 junction. It's being moved to the right. Alta Bank is Utah's largest community bank. Join them each Friday here on KSL for Alta Banking, weekly business talk geared toward elevating your financial future. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, 88 degrees with a slight chance of isolated thunderstorms today, clearing at 89 tomorrow, partly sunny and low 90s over the weekend. It's 80 degrees right now in Salt Lake City at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. This is Utah's all-day companion for news.
Race relations in Utah. A special hour with Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Welcome back, everyone, to this special coverage here on KSL News Radio. I am Boyd Matheson, opinion editor at the Deseret News, and appreciate you joining the conversation today because it's a crucial conversation. If you've missed any of it, make sure you go pick up the podcast as we talk about race relations in Utah. I am really excited for our next two guests who have come together. Derek Miller, who heads the Chamber of Commerce, and James Jackson III, who is the founder of the Utah Black Chamber of Commerce. And to both of you, gentlemen, thanks for joining us today on Inside Sources.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Good to be with you.
Wonderful. And Derek, we feel like you're always here with us because we get to hear your speaking on business as part of my show. So I always feel like Derek's in the house, but we appreciate that. The two of you wrote just a really powerful, very important op-ed last week about Utah businesses, how Utah businesses can contribute to eliminating racism, and just some places to start. And so, James, maybe I'll start with you if that's all right. Give us a little background. How did this come about, and why is this so important right now?
Well, of course, with the social unrest, many companies have been reaching out to the Black Chamber, wanting to see, knowing and understanding that they have to do better with their hiring practices, with their policies, with their initiatives, and making sure that their company is more welcoming and inclusive. And the Black Chamber has always had a great relationship with the Salt Lake Chamber. And so our team came together and see what can we do to push out this initiative and giving companies just a starting point on how they can actually start the progress of ensuring that their company is more inclusive.
Wonderful. That's so important. In our last segment, we were talking with Teresa Deer, who's a board member from the NAACP, and I just love her quote. She says, diversity and inclusion is different than racism. And that's what you just got to, James, that it's not always about a racism issue. Sometimes it is. We got to have that conversation. Sometimes it's just that we're not focused on the diversity and inclusion as such a critical part of it. So, Derek, let me ask you in terms of some of these suggestions that you and James offer in your piece. What are some of the things that the business community can start to do, again, to get to that diversity and inclusion, which is such a critical part of all of this?
Well, I had a wonderful conversation with James shortly after we saw some of the unrest, even here in Salt Lake City, and what he shared with me, because I asked James the very question, Boyd, that you just asked me. I said, James, where do businesses start? And so I'm borrowing his line. But
as all good friends do, that's good.
James said to me, it starts by first listening. And that was a really powerful concept to me, because I can tell you, having worked in business for a long time, and both of you have, and many of your listeners have as well, we have a tendency to want to just jump in. If we see a problem, we say, oh, by golly, let's jump in and solve it. And in this case, that's not the right way to start. And really, the right way to start is by listening. And specifically what we suggested in our joint op-ed was reaching out to colleagues, friends, neighbors, people who you know of color, and just talking to them about their experiences. And, ever since I had that conversation with James, I've tried to do that. And something that I've learned actually goes back, Boyd, to the point you made about diversity and inclusion. And that is, it's not good enough to just say or feel or even act in a non-racist manner. You actually have to be proactive.
Yeah.
You can't passively be involved in racial equality. You have to actively be involved in it, and you don't know how to act unless you first start by listening.
Yeah, that's such a great point. If you're just joining us, we've got Derek Miller from the Chamber of Commerce and James Jackson III of the Black Chamber, both put together just a great piece. And James, I want to go to you now on some of these specific things. Once we've listened, once we've gained that insight, you suggest that we start by examining our leadership team. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the visions that the Black Chamber has for the Utah's community is increasing diverse leadership in companies, because this is an opportunity to really elevate Utah's diversity by having diversity at the table to help you make these decisions within your policies and your hiring practices to ensure that your company is more welcoming. Because how do you know how welcoming your company is when you don't have diversity in leadership? And so it's really looking at how can you expand beyond your normal influence. Just like Derek was saying, you have to be intentional when it comes to diversity and inclusion. If you're just reaching outside, if you're just reaching within your own influence and your influence is all white, well, then you're going to have a problem. I'm trying to build a diverse and inclusive company. So it's really just building relationships outside your own influence and looking for opportunities to elevate your current diverse employees into leadership positions through mentorship, any type of leadership programs, looking at employee resource groups, and how to find ways to ensure that there is a pipeline of leadership going into that is diverse.
That's so important, because it's not just a one and done or one off thing. It's not only having people at the table, it's having them have a voice at that table.
Absolutely.
Well, is such a big part of that. Derek, just in our last couple of minutes, you all have combined for some resources, some ideas. What are some of the things that businesses should be doing in terms of employee resources as it relates to race and diversity?
Well, we are creating a forum here in partnership between the Utah Black Chamber and the Salt Lake Chamber. A few different opportunities for businesses to figure this out. And the first one is next Wednesday. We've got a webinar that we'll be doing. James has put together a great panel and has asked me to moderate that panel, talking about how you put these resources to work in your own business. And of course, that won't be the end of it. We've also created an ongoing forum where CEOs and other business leaders can come together and have this conversation. The conversation can sometimes be uncomfortable, but as James has taught me, uncomfortable conversations is what leads to lasting and important change.
So good. Appreciate both of you coming on, and we'll post all of this on our Facebook page, our Inside Sources Facebook page, so you can see both the pieces that they've written together and pieces they've also written separately. But all those great resources, encourage you to engage. As both of you have said, this is an ongoing process thing, and I think it's so important. We talked about this in our last segment, that the real key is that we have to recognize that this is not going to be solved by government or law enforcement alone. I think, like most things in the country, this is going to start in our homes, in our neighborhoods, and especially our businesses, especially those businesses that engage to make a difference in the community. Gentlemen, thanks both of you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Boyd. Appreciate it.
All right. Again, that's James Jackson III and Derek Miller. And great conversation. There's some great resources for businesses. I encourage you to check those out if you're an entrepreneur, business owner of any kind, in terms of how do you do that? How do you not only create a space where you can develop those leaders so they can sustain it over time, you can have those critical conversations and actually give back to the community and make a difference. This will start in places like Utah. This is not going to come down from the marbled halls of Washington, D.C. It's not going to be law enforcement alone. This is a we the people, and the business community plays a significant role in this, so we appreciate their leadership. All right, we're going to go ahead and step aside, come back. Final thoughts on race relations in Utah. Special coverage here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. We'll be right back.
There are some strategies that could help you get more income from Social Security that the Social Security Administration could never tell you. Did you catch that? There are some strategies that could help you get more income from Social Security that the Social Security Administration could never tell you. Learn what these strategies are in a free Social Security analysis from Boss Retirement Solutions in Salt Lake, winner of Utah's Best of State Award for Retirement Planning. If you have not filed for your Social Security benefits and have saved more than $200,000, be one of the first 10 callers to schedule your free analysis now at 801-682-4448. Discover how you could get tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional Social Security income. 801-682-4448. 801-682-4448.
I'm meteorologist Kevin Eubank. Listen for the KSL weather and allergy report at 7:40 in the morning and 5:40 in the afternoon.
Brought to you by Superior Water and Air.
This is Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes. As the state's top prosecutor and law enforcement officer, it is my duty to ensure our state is a safe place for children, families, businesses, and all Utahns. I am honored to protect our state now and would be honored to continue protecting it as your Attorney General for the next 4 years.
Paid for by friends of Sean Reyes. This is Derek Miller speaking on business. Washington Federal Bank has a history of planning for the future that has established it as one of the most highly capitalized banks in America. This foresight has helped it weather challenging economies while continuing to support its clients. Marlise Fisher, the bank's regional president, is here to talk about how they are working to protect client assets and provide opportunities for continued growth in Utah.
While COVID-19 has been challenging for everyone, Washington Federal Bank is working to ease the strain on Utah businesses. Shortly after the pandemic hit, we began offering 90-day interest-free small business lifeline loans that have helped more than 1,200 businesses. The bank also assisted more than 6,000 businesses to secure operating capital through the SBA's PPP loan program. Nearly half of these were new clients that were unable to get the help they needed from their previous banks. Washington Federal's commitment to Utah extends to its employees as well, actually adding staff through the pandemic and by providing a month of full pay to those employees who felt unsafe coming to work. The bank continues to offer services through our drive-through tellers and ATMs, and we are working toward fully opening each branch as soon as is prudent with the latest CDC guidance.
We are grateful for Washington Federal's ongoing support for Utah businesses and their leadership by example. I'm Derek Miller with the Salt Lake Chamber, and this is Speaking on Business.
I learned it from my coaches. Expect more. I'm Blake Moore, and I carried that motto with me my whole life. From football to the Foreign Service, to my work now helping businesses grow and thrive. America's facing some big challenges: economic, public health, and with China. In this election, the right experience matters. I'm Blake Moore, and I approve this message because America can emerge strong from this crisis by expecting more.
Conservative Blake Moore for Congress.
Paid for by Blake Moore for Congress.
Race relations in Utah. In-depth coverage on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back, everyone. Final segment of the Inside Sources portion of this special programming today here on KSL News Radio, Race Relations in Utah. I am Boyd Matheson, opinion editor at the Deseret News. If you've missed any of our conversation today, make sure that you pick that up on our website, on our Inside Sources Facebook page, or of course you can always download the KSL News Radio app, which is powered by our friends at Any Hour Services. A lot of great conversations today. We spoke with Mia Love. We spoke with Teresa Deer from the NAACP National Board. We talked to Jack Gerard, a segment that we recorded with them about race relations and conversations and how you actually get into the action part of this thing. It's not just, you got to start with the listening, you got to get the understanding, and then you got to pivot and you got to get to action and make sure we're actually doing something about it. Great conversation we just had with both the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce and also the Black Chamber. Great conversation there, and much more to come there throughout the next hour. Jeff Kaplan will be up next for continued conversation, and then Lee Lonsberry will pick it up from there. So we're really focused in terms of where do we go next? How do we make sure that this is not a moment, but a real movement? How do we make sure we're getting all the right conversations to take place? And that takes a lot of courage. And so I've been thinking a lot and going back through many of the addresses from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And one that has just stirred me in so many different ways was actually his speech when he received the Nobel Peace Prize. And one of the things that he talked about was this courage, that courage is this inner resolution to go forward despite obstacles, that cowardice is submissive surrender to circumstances. Courage breeds creativity. Cowardice represses fear and is mastered by it. And then he got to this great question moment of cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Is it politically correct? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And to me, that's what this is really all about. So I want to start our final segment today with actually a speech that George W. Bush gave in July of 2000 at the NAACP conference. And to me, this really sets the stage in terms of where we are. More importantly, where are we going to go next?
For our nation, there is no denying the truth that slavery is a blight on our history and that racism, despite all the progress, still exists today. Recognizing and confronting our history is important. Transcending our history is essential. We're not limited by what we have done or what we have left undone. We are limited only by what we're willing to do.
We are only limited by what we are willing to do. So regardless of what we have done or what we have undone, it's really about what's next. And what are each of us willing to do individually, collectively, as a society? What are we willing to do? That's how history is going to judge us, not our political leaders, not our law enforcement. It will judge us, we the people, by what we actually choose to do. I want to shift now to part of Martin Luther King Jr.'s acceptance speech for the Nobel Prize. And I want to begin with really kind of a framing of kind of where he thought we were in this process and where he thought things needed to go next.
Sooner or later, all the peoples of the world will have to discover a way to live together in peace and thereby transform this pending cosmic elegy into a creative psalm of brotherhood. If this is to be achieved, man must evolve for all human conflict, a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love.
A creative psalm of brotherhood. That's got to be the model. One that rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. And he said that he has a firm belief that we can actually do this.
I accept this award today with an abiding faith in America and an audacious faith in the future of mankind. I refuse to accept despair as the final response to the ambiguities of history.
So despite those ambiguities of history, there is cause for hope, as he said it, an audacious faith in the future of mankind. And sadly, we've pointed out today the lack of courage in our nation's capital on an issue regarding law enforcement, where the vast majority of the American people know we need to have some changes and some things improved. We need to make progress. The Senate did not take up the bill. It was blocked. The House will likely pass a version today, and nothing will happen. Even though members of both political parties agree on the vast majority of the steps to be taken, the pieces of legislation that need to be implemented, we aren't even going to have the conversation on the floor of the United States Senate. And yet, despite that, I agree with Dr. King that we can have an audacious faith in the future of mankind. Why? Because despite politics failing, America will not. Because it's culture, it's people, it's individuals, it's families that lead the nation, and the politicians will follow. And as long as we remember that, we too can have that audacious faith that Dr. King talked about in the future of mankind. And he described how we need to do that. What's the core, what's the guiding principle that will make that all happen?
I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right temporarily defeated is stronger than evil triumphant.
So as we look at that, how do we move forward? What can give us faith in all of that? And it is a faith and a confidence in the people. And, you know, we look at, I think it was Winston Churchill who said, you can always count on the American people to do the right thing after they've exhausted every other possibility. And sometimes we do that. But even with that, Dr. King showed that we can have courage, the courage to face challenging times.
This faith can give us courage to face the uncertainties of the future. It will give our tired feet new strength as we continue our forward stride toward the city of freedom. When our days become dreary with low hovering clouds, and our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, we will know that we are living in the creative turmoil of a genuine civilization struggling to be born.
So there's much more that we have to do. And sometimes in periods like this in our nation's history, it is easy to look at those low-hanging and dreary clouds. It's easy to say this is never going to change. It's easy to believe that we're powerless as individuals, but we're not. We're not. And it's that confidence in people that I think have driven all the great reformers in history, the people who really can make a difference. I want to conclude with one last quote from this is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s acceptance speech when he received the Nobel Peace Prize. And to me, this is where I think we can begin to move towards a new dawn.
I refuse to accept the idea that man is mere flotsam and jetsam in the river of life, unable to influence the unfolding events which surround him. I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality.
All right. There will be a dawn. There will be a new day. I hope this is part of that, because if we can't get there now, then we really have to question our ability to come together as a nation. And so we can acknowledge all the things that we've talked about today. I love the fact that Mia Love framed it in the context of painting, that you can't paint what you can't see. And so we have to see things a little different maybe than we have in the past. I love the framing of George W. Bush 2 decades ago when he said it's not about what we've done or left undone. It's about what we do next. It's about that challenge, that opportunity. Appreciate both our friends from both the Chamber of Commerce and the Black Chamber talking about things businesses can do to make sure that we are getting to that point that it's not just ending the racism, which we have to expunge and expel, but we also have to get to that point of inclusion and opportunity and moving things forward in a very positive way. And then, of course, the great words from Dr. King. And the real test is what will we do about it? I think one of the challenges we should all take a look at is on a regular basis. On a regular basis, we should go break bread, have a lunch, get a drink, do whatever it is with someone who looks different, thinks different, or lives different than ourselves. I'm Boyd Matheson, opinion editor at the Deseret News. Great to be with you on this special edition, Race Relations in Utah, here on KSL News Radio. And as always, as you go out into the world today, please make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and above all, do something today that makes a difference.
This is your daily resource for critical breaking news, weather, and conversation about Utah's most important stories. Listen on the KSL News Radio app. Brought to you by Any Hour Services, KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Live coverage, race relations in Utah on KSL News Radio, Utah's all-day companion for news.
Good afternoon. It's 12 noon at KSL News Radio. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. KSL's top story this hour.
The coronavirus, Utah families and schools.
The former head of the Utah Education Association, who now leads the National Education Association, is hopeful kids can be back in the classroom this fall. Lisa Eskelson Garcia told CNN she wants Congress to pass a bill to help schools with funding as they try to create plans to keep their kids safe.
The Senate could solve this problem because we are bleeding revenue right now.
She says schools need to follow the advice from people like Dr. Fauci, and she knows there will be some kids who get the virus and ultimately spread it. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield says he's concerned about the surge of COVID-19 cases in the South and here in the West. He hopes people are smart as we approach the 4th of July.
For those at higher risk, we recommend limiting contacts with others as much as possible or restricting contacts to a small number of people who are willing to take measures to reduce the risk of becoming infected.
The CDC has deployed over 100 staff members to more than 20 states, seeing surges to help local health departments deal with the cases. We are also waiting to see if Governor Gary Herbert will approve a request from the Salt Lake County mayor to make mask wearing mandatory in public today. We'll get you the latest on that decision as soon as it comes through. Coronavirus coverage every 30 minutes on KSL News Radio. 2 people have been arrested in Utah County accused of being part of a drug operation supplying heroin to over 100 people per day in both Utah and Salt Lake counties. Police affidavits say the Utah County Major Crimes Task Force has been investigating Jeremy Farrell and Emily White for several months. Your money at this moment, while my page loads, the Dow is up 22 to 25,468. The S&P is up 3. The NASDAQ is up 21. Coming up on KSL News Radio, warming up for the weekend before the temperatures drop. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 12:02.
I'm David Levitt. As county attorney, I'm improving how we protect our most vulnerable. Only 1 in 6 women report when they're sexually assaulted. Of reported cases, statewide we prosecute only a small percentage. Why? It's time to call it like it is. Women don't report because they don't feel heard by a system that re-victimizes them and that generally sees things from a man's perspective. That must change. What about unpaid child support? Thousands of parents owe felony amounts. That devastates families and costs the government millions when it has to support our children. Yet we prosecute only a handful of those cases. Consider our elderly. Over 5,000 cases of elder abuse each year, but we prosecute only 2%. It's time to refocus, focusing on the crimes that hurt our children, the women, and the elderly. That's what I'm doing in Utah County, and I'll do it for the whole state. Let's not give our Attorney General a third term. Learn more at davidlevitt.com. I'm David Levitt. I approve this message.
Hi, guys. It's Andrew with Wasatch Medical Clinic. Are you struggling with ED? Well, I have great news. We can now fix the problem without any medication, injections, or surgery. Our advanced form of wave therapy is clinically proven to regrow blood vessels and restore spontaneity in the bedroom. We can do so quickly, affordably, and with 0 side effects.
Hi, my name is Rich, and I'm an actual patient. I recently overcame my skepticism and started treatments last week. I was astonished to see instant results. These treatments work, and the increase in blood flow was immediate. My only regret is not starting sooner.
If you're struggling with ED and want a long-lasting fix, call in the next 2 minutes and we'll give you the medical assessment and ultrasound totally free. We'll also give you a special gift that produces instant results to improve your intimacy. That's a $400 value, totally free. Put a stop to your ED. Call 801-901-8000. That's 801-901-8000. Call Wasatch Medical right now to claim that offer. 801-901-8000.
With the uncertainty of today's economic outlook for retirees, there's never been a more critical time to consider a reverse mortgage than now. You see, when you add your house into your financial mix, you might just find your economic outlook isn't as bleak as you think. From reducing your monthly expenses, increasing your monthly cash flow, or just simply having an extra bucket of money as a resource, a reverse mortgage may be just the ticket to a happier, more secure retirement. After a lifetime of work, maybe it's time to let the equity in your home do the heavy lifting. If you or someone you know can benefit from these resources, give Reverse Freedom a call, and they'll show you all your options. To get a free reverse mortgage analysis from Reverse Freedom right here in Utah, call 801-921-HOME, 801-921-HOME. Call Reverse Freedom now, 801-921-HOME, or visit reversefreedom.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Mountain America, your home for home loans. Here's Ricky Mace.
Traffic all snarled up due to road work, both directions of Highway 89, and it's anywhere from Layton up to the Uinta South Weber area. We have 2 crashes downtown. One may involve a bike or motorcycle. 9th South at Main Street, and a crash also reported at 700 South, 700 East. Ricky Mace in the KSL Traffic Center.
There could be a few small thunderstorms popping up throughout the day. The high could reach 88 degrees, and the clouds should start clearing out tomorrow. Temperatures will be in the 90s for the weekend before they drop on Monday. Right now, it's 83 degrees and broken clouds at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. This is Utah's all-day companion for news.
Race Relations in Utah, a 1-hour special with Jeff Kaplan and Jason Lee of the Deseret News on KSL News Radio 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Welcome to this special hour on KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan as our radio station continues a day-long focus on race relations and diversity in Utah. Our goal is to gain understanding by exploring some of the issues that have exploded in the weeks gone by. And I'm honored to be joined by a wonderful and insightful Deseret News journalist, Jason Lee, who also hosts the podcast Voices of Reason, which is heard every Sunday, 3 p.m. here on KSL News Radio. Jason, thank you for being here.
Jeff, thanks for having me. It's going to be great to join you today.
It's not a comfortable discussion, though. Today is, I think, a month since George Floyd was killed, and a lot of people are confused from the streets. They're hearing things they've never heard before. White privilege, defund the police, and the shouting has gone in both directions. Jason, it almost feels like battle lines are being drawn.
Well, I think those battle lines have been drawn for years now, and this is the time when there's been this tipping point, and maybe this is a time in history when change actually can be manifest to happen. And whereas before people thought it didn't involve me, it doesn't really affect me, when you see someone's life taken away from them in such a harsh and inhumane way, and you could see yourself being that person, maybe that's what was needed to then have people say, you know, I want something to be done that we can make things better for us in the future.
Jason, we just agreed before the show we would discuss where we're coming from and a little of our own histories regarding race. You first.
Sure. I grew up in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago. I didn't have any white friends until I went to college at the University of Illinois. And so my life was pretty sheltered in that way. And going to college, meeting new people, having to learn a lot about others different from myself, it was challenging, certainly, and but it helped me for the rest of my life, because today in professional environments that I'm in around this country, I'm able to have conversations with people different from me and still be appreciative of the people they are. I can give them a sense of security when they talk to me, that I am much like them, and that they don't have to worry about, just because we look a little different and we may have come from different places, that we don't have many of the same things that we try to do in our lives, and we want success for everybody that we come in contact with.
I appreciate your story. Mine is pretty simple. Suburban New Jersey. My seminal moment was 1967. I'm 8 years old. My parents told me there were riots 30 miles up the road in Newark, New Jersey in 1967. Dad said they're burning the town down. And I was scared that they were going to come for me in my suburban home 30 miles away, which was ridiculous. I didn't have my first black friend till 10th grade. And in realistic terms, I'm still catching up at this point. That's the honest assessment.
Do you feel like you have this may be your opportunity to, catch up some more?
A little bit during this hour, and our goal is a simple one: to listen and to understand. And we don't have to agree, Jason and I,
Absolutely.
or you and anyone else, but let's get to the part where we understand the argument. And the first argument is whether Black Lives Matter, whether Blue Lives Matter, or all lives matter, criminal justice and policing. And our guests in this portion of this hour, Monica Williams from Weber State University. She's an associate professor of criminal justice. Welcome to KSL News Radio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. And also joining us, former Salt Lake City Police Chief Chris Burbank. Thanks for being here.
I've had the opportunity to talk to Chris before, and he's very insightful. I'm really looking forward to this. But Professor Williams, I got to be honest with you, this is my first chance, other than yesterday, to talk with you at length. And I was hoping you could kind of give us some understanding, historically speaking, of criminal justice and policing, and how it began and how it's evolved to where we are today.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that people should know about the history of policing in the United States is that it really began as a way to control the underclasses. So when Jeff was speaking about the riots in the 60s, way before that, there had been various riots, working class, especially in the North. And in major cities like Boston and Chicago, these riots by working class people actually led the elite groups to create police forces. So that was in the North. In the South, the policing began as slave patrols. So the first not formal police departments, but groups that were seen as kind of like law enforcement in the South were slave patrols. So they were looking for slaves who were out when they weren't supposed to be. The landowners were really, and slave owners were really concerned about losing, at that time, their property. So they had these slave patrols. And the main concern for these landowners was that the slaves were going to band together and overthrow the system, and additionally that they were going to band together with working class whites who were also, in pretty poor situation, but not in the same level, obviously, as slaves. So what they did is they made those working class whites become the slave patrols. So it was kind of like, well, we're poor too, but at least now we're a little bit above the slaves because we get to kind of police the slaves. So that's really important to remember, that the history of policing in the US started with slave patrols and as a way to kind of control people who were rioting and protesting and trying to make things right.
So in this way, it looks a lot like controlling is the word that we would use. Police were used to control, generally speaking, people of color and people of the underclass, and protect those who had money, land, and things like that.
Correct. So it was all about policing anything that might threaten the people who owned property or land or had money and resources. And a lot of times, or at least in some instances, in the larger cities, those were the people with the power to create the police forces. So it in some cities led directly to the creation of the police forces.
Can you talk a little bit about, as more off of policing, a little bit to criminal justice, where we talk about how did we come with prosecutors, defense, court systems, and as it turns out, prison systems, which, by the way, after slavery was abolished, the only way people could become indentured servants is if they were arrested and imprisoned. So can you kind of expound on that a little bit, Professor?
So a lot of our criminal justice system, even policing as well, is kind of adapted, I guess, from the English model of policing and courts. Obviously, we took it in our own direction. So our court system developed as a more adversarial system where it's kind of, prosecutor versus defense, and whoever has the best argument wins, essentially. Whereas in other countries, especially the European model and the English model, is more that it's about finding out the truth. So the what would be similar to prosecutors and judges really work a little bit more collaboratively to figure out what actually happened. So that's one difference between our system and other systems, is that ours evolved as a more kind of compete for who makes the best case, and that's the side that wins.
But it still is a system that isn't necessarily fair, though, right?
I would say not, and the research shows not. Defendants who are people of color are generally at a disadvantage in the court system. Multiple studies have shown that people of color get harsher sentences for the same types of crimes compared to white people. And when we talk about incarceration, the U.S. has by far the highest incarceration rate in the world, or one of the highest in the world. And it's very disproportionately African-American, and particularly African-American men.
Given those statistics, I would like to ask both of our guests. First, Monica Williams, do you believe there is systemic racism in policing in Utah in 2020?
Absolutely. I think there's systemic racism in policing across the country. And part of that just stems from where policing came from. Because it started for racist reasons, there's not really ever been a push to change the structure of policing to make it less systemically racist. And I think this is a really important point, because there's discussions out there about, the videos that we see, and these are just bad apple police officers. I don't think we can just say that there's just individual officers, and there's such a pattern across the country of similar kinds of violence against particularly Black men, and particularly young Black men, that we can't say that it's just one bad police officer here and there. It's a systemic problem for sure. That's just embedded in, I think, from the very beginning of policing. It's been there, and we haven't really done much to try to change that.
And let's ask the former Salt Lake City Police Chief, Chris Burbank, do you believe there's systemic racism in Utah police departments, not just Salt Lake City, but Utah departments?
Yes, I think Monica addressed it adequately. Absolutely there is. If you look at the outcome of the criminal justice system, we have disparity. But one of the things that I think is important, because what we like to do is we like to put labels. And so when you say systemic racism, what you have is you have disparity in the outcome. What we want to determine scientifically is what is directly attributed to the racism that exists within police officers and what is within the system. What we see across the country, 250 agencies that we've worked with across the country, and you take a baseline of the bias of the individual officers, the outcome is always much more disparate than what you would anticipate looking at the individual racism found in human beings. And so it's the system, it's the policy, the procedure, and the practice that has more influence on the outcome than the individual racism of police officers.
When we come back, we're going to go a little bit deeper than whether Black lives matter or blue lives or all lives matter. That just really scratches the surface. We're going to continue the conversation. Jason Lee from the Deseret News is with me. Chris Burbank and Monica Williams, stay with us on KSL News Radio.
This is Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes. As the state's top prosecutor and law enforcement officer, it is my duty to ensure our state is a safe place for children, families, businesses, and all Utahns. I am honored to protect our state now and would be honored to continue protecting it as your Attorney General for the next 4 years.
Paid for by friends of Sean Reyes.
Whipple plumbing. I say Whipple, say Whipple, say Whipple, say Whipple, say Whipple plumbing.
The comfortable, elongated, super flushing Gerber Viper toilet is a marvel of plumbing engineering, and at just $299 installed, it's a no-brainer. Yes, it comes with a toilet seat. It wouldn't be very comfortable without it. Call Whipple Service Champions at 801-444-FAST. 444-FAST. Plumbing, heating, air conditioning, electrical, drain cleaning, and remodeling. Specials in every department. Call 801-444-FAST. For emergencies, when you call today, we come today.
Whipple they come, plumbing troubles all gone. For plumbing and heating and air conditioning. Whipple they come, air condition your home. They are the service champions, red carpet is their thing. Whipple they come, heating troubles all gone.
The Utah Pork Producers Association and its farmer members all across the state want to ensure you that pork production in Utah continues without interruption. Rest assured, Utah pork producers take every precaution to keep their employees safe while delivering a safe and reliable pork product to your family. Utah pork production continues in an effort to meet the strong demand for pork at grocery stores and restaurants now reopening. Now that summer is here, remember to include pork in your family's outings and grilling plans. Pork is full of protein and nutrients important to a healthy family diet, and many pork cuts are leaner than chicken. So, what will it be for dinner on that new Camp Chef grill tonight? Pork tenderloins, pork kebabs, or marinated pork chops? Listen all week to KSL Radio for your chance to win a new Camp Chef grill and grocery gift card. The Utah Pork Producers Association is proud to serve Utah families. Stay safe and stay healthy. This message brought to you by the Utah Pork Producers Association and its farmers.
Businesses are starting to bounce back. But what if you could do better than that? What if you could adapt, deliver, and succeed in new ways with new customers? At Comcast Business, we want to help you not just bounce back, but bounce forward. And now, with one of our best offers ever, we're committed to helping you do just that. Get a powerful and reliable solution with Internet, Voice, and Security Edge for only $29.95 a month for 3 months with a 2-year agreement. It'll help you stay ahead with a network you can count on. Stay connected with 24/7 support and thrive with flexible solutions that work wherever you are. Call 1-800-501-6000 or go online today to find out more. Comcast Business. Offer ends 7/5/2020. Restrictions apply. Limited to new Comcast Business 100 megabits internet, one voice mobility line, and security edge customers. Early termination fee applies. Equipment installation taxes and fees extra. Subject to change.
Race relations in Utah. In-depth coverage on KSL News Radio.
This is Jeff Kaplan, along with Jason Lee from the Deseret News. Our guests, Monica Williams from Weber State, an associate prof of criminal justice, and former Salt Lake City Police Chief Chris Burbank. Thank you both for being here. I hope you'll indulge me because we're going to begin this next segment with a Facebook meme. Will you all forgive me?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, this is about Rayshard Brooks, and it happened to just catch me. Rayshard Brooks, if you don't know, fell asleep in his car while in line at a Wendy's drive-thru in Atlanta a few weeks ago. Police were in the process of arresting him when he attempted to run away, and Officer Garrett Rolfe shot him twice in the back. Mr. Brooks died. And here's where the meme goes. What could have happened in this instance? Well, Officer Rolfe could have said, hey, in light of what's happening in the country now, I'm going to move your car. Mr. Brooks, I'm going to put it over in that parking space. I'm calling you an Uber. You're going home. Come back tomorrow. Get your keys in your car, then report to the police station. The other cop could have said, I'll tell the manager at the Wendy's that your car's in the parking lot overnight so you don't have any problems. Mr. Brooks says, thank you. And the result is that Tamika Miller still has her husband. Mr. Brooks' children still have their father. So I want to ask you both, Monica Williams and Chris Burbank, is this a fairy tale or is this the way policing actually should work?
Can we start with Chief Burbank?
Oh, absolutely. So, yes, there are alternatives to policing, and we get stuck in a rut in which we respond. But the thing that I think is important here, right, we want to point the finger at policing, right? Policing is a system that meets the expectation of the public. And now it's no longer meeting that expectation. We're saying, hey, wait a minute, we need to change that explanation. Is it all right to allow that individual? We have walk away in that particular circumstance. We have for years and years correlated reduction in crime to the number of arrests that we've made historically. And there is absolutely no scientific correlation between those two things. And so it is now time to start evaluating everything that the police do and saying, is this the right thing to do? And in fact, if we're ever going to change the outcome of use of force, we need to start evaluating those instances on why are we there in the first place? As opposed to that moment in time that you say, oh yeah, boy, that got bad. Well, we would never have that bad moment if we weren't involved in the first place, or if we changed the dynamic from the beginning.
Professor Williams, how could we change that dynamic? What could we do to help maybe mitigate circumstances so that police officers with the kind of training that those officers might have had might not have necessarily had to resort to that outcome?
That's a great question, and I agree with everything that Chris just said. One of the things that we need to think about in these cases is not was the shooting justified, but could it have been avoided? And what were the things, as Chris said, leading up to it? One of the things that happens, thinking about the entire situation in that case, was there's somebody asleep in their car in the drive-thru, and the first thing, maybe not the first thing, but the thing that happens is that people call the police. So we've become so separated from each other, I think, and so worried about safety individually, like in our communities, that maybe nobody thought to go up and find out if the guy was okay before they called the police. But also we as the public just generally don't have that many other options. So we call the police for everything. And the vast majority of calls to police are service calls, general service kinds of things. It's not very common that police are called to, for example, crimes in progress or someone's breaking into my house right now. Of course it happens, but it's very rare. So one of the things that you hear a lot is officers have to make split-second decisions. So we could start thinking about how do we make it so the officers responding to these calls don't put themselves in situations where they only have a split second to respond. So it's the dynamics going into the call is exactly right, that we really have to look at what's getting them there in the first place, and then once they're there, what are they doing to keep themselves safe and keep the people around them safe.
Well, perhaps this is a problem because we have to consider that perhaps we should do something else. And we're first starting to investigate this. And it brings up the what about argument. What about if there's a robber inside your garage? What about if somebody robs your house? You get home, everything's missing. Who are you going to call when there's a riot on your street? Do you want a police officer or do you want a social worker on your doorstep? These are some of the arguments against. And how do you counter beyond saying we have to look at?
Oh, Jeff, let me jump in on that if you're okay.
Sure.
Because absolutely. So we are not talking about those serious crimes, right? The police are very well equipped to deal with those circumstances. You look across the country throughout the last 10 years, the individuals that are being shot and killed by the police are not murderers, are not serial killers. They fell asleep. They have a tail light out. They're selling CDs. They're selling cigarettes. This is a nonsensical argument. Let's start evaluating this notion that anything that makes us feel uncomfortable, we call the police, because the police have really just two options, right? Because that's all we've given them in their tool bag. They can arrest the person and remove them from the situation, or they can allow them to stay there. Now, if you are the business owner, or you're the person next in line in the Wendy's who called and said, hey, there's a guy sleeping here, you're not going to be very happy if you have to drive around, which again says something about society. But there are alternatives to this. And so the police are set up to fail in those circumstances because they have no other options. Let's start providing avenues that are not driven by arrests. This notion that if we arrest every small minor detail in society, we won't have significant problems, does not bear out. Scientifically, it is not factual.
Chris Burbank is currently the vice president for policing for the National Center for Policing Equity in New York. And this is the kind of thing he's talked about for some time. I'm wondering, as we look forward to kinds of solutions, what kinds of policies can we begin to implement that will, is it, defunding the police is a terrible term. They need to, what they mean to
bad
do
branding.
It's a terrible branding, right? What they mean to say is they want to use some of the money that otherwise goes to policing to other kinds of things involved in community safety. But in that way, I would like to ask Professor Williams and then Chris, what kinds of solutions could we implement that could make a difference in and hopefully improve outcomes when there are interactions with police, or should there, or maybe not have as many interactions with police?
I think this actually goes back to the question about whether this is a systemic problem. One of the most fascinating research findings to me is that when police departments have a clear and specific use of force policy, just having the policy actually decreases incidences of use of force. So having the policy, making sure your officers know about it, that to me indicates that we need those kind of bigger changes within police departments. Training is great, but actually doesn't always fix the problem. And research shows that things like having policies are actually a good start. But definitely shifting money from some of the more militaristic aspects of policing toward social work agencies, toward child and family services, toward domestic violence agencies, towards agencies that work with the homeless to try to fix the problems that people are seeing that they're calling police on. And it really does go back to what Chris said about people call the police on every little thing of disorder. And it's really important to remember that that's basically why policing started in the very first place, is that the elites, white elites, were really uncomfortable with these people who were different in their midst. And so they were calling police because they weren't doing things the way that everyone, the white elite were doing things. And we're still seeing that today. So I think shifting the resources around to these other agencies is a really good start.
Chris?
Okay, so I'll try and be brief, but this is a big question and it's important. So if we're talking specifically about use of force, it's time to change the statute to read necessary and to evaluate the entire circumstance, not just that moment in time. You will never change the outcome or the use of force if we don't address why is the officer in the situation in the first place that they then feel the fear necessary to use deadly force. Let's change the beginning of this. What are we going on? The criteria for what we're going on. And then as you change that statute, as you change the expectation, that's exactly the level that you're training police officers for. This is not a surprise. Aha, we got you now. We're going to tell you about it, and then we're going to train you to that standard. But for your other question, I point to Colorado, right? When they moved down the road to legalize marijuana, the discussion, and especially from law enforcement, was crime will go through the roof. Everybody will be using marijuana. What will we do? Well, what have we seen years later? Crime's declined. Use of force has declined. The number of arrests have gone down. The number of arrests for possessions have disappeared completely. And the force traditionally associated with those, which has been significant in the past, is no longer there. And now the question is, and the most interesting sample is, dispensaries are going down. Use is not on the increase. In fact, public demand has decreased and we've got less crime. So why do we not evaluate all that the police department does? You go through the line item budget, right? And the line item that says armored vehicle to drive into the middle of a crowd, well, that doesn't happen if you cross that off the list. And that's just the beginning. Evaluate policing on an efficacy. What is the purpose of what you're doing, and does it have the desired outcome? In most circumstances, when we look at a lot of efforts by police, it is 1% effective in getting to violent criminals, but it impacts millions and millions of people across this country inequitably every single day.
Points to ponder. Insightful analysis, in fact, from former Salt Lake City Police Chief Chris Burbank and Monica Williams from Weber State University. Thank you both so much for coming on the air this half hour. Jason Lee and Jeff Kaplan, our special hour on race relations and diversity will continue after this news break.
Good afternoon, 12:34 in the KSL News Radio newsroom. I'm Kira Hoffenlayer, KSL's top local story this hour.
The coronavirus, your money, and security.
The number of new claims for unemployment insurance in Utah has stayed about the same for the last few weeks, just under 5,000. About 84,000 people are getting ongoing unemployment payments, including the extra $600 a week from that federal CARES Act. Kevin Burt, the state's unemployment insurance director, says that goes away at the end of July.
That $600 stimulus in 5 weeks is removed for all of those programs, meaning that all individuals on whatever program you are eligible for will return to a 40% replacement wage.
Burt says people need to look now at whether their jobs are likely to come back and start looking for something new if they don't think so. Salt Lake City has canceled the 4th of July fireworks show because of coronavirus. They say they don't want large crowds gathering in Jordan Park or Liberty Park. The city says people should enjoy the holiday in small groups instead. They also have an online patriotic decorating contest. Other cities are still holding fireworks displays that they say many people can watch from their homes. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. A more realistic estimate of the total number of U.S. coronavirus cases could be as high as 23 million. That's 10 times the number of current confirmed cases. The CDC estimates this after it tracked blood samples across the country during testing for COVID-19 antibodies. Coronavirus coverage every 30 minutes on KSL News Radio. And let's take a look at your numbers right now. The Dow dropping sharply in the last 30 minutes, down 45 to 25,400. The S&P also down 3, almost 4. The NASDAQ down 15 3/4. Coming up on KSL News Radio, the clouds are moving in and weather is next. KSL News Time, 12:35.
Even with school and work upside down right now, we're here.
We're here.
We're here for you with important news before 9.
You can always count on us.
KSL News Radio, Utah's all-day companion for news.
There are some strategies that can help you get more income from Social Security.
that the Social Security Administration could never tell you. Did you catch that? There are some strategies that could help you get more income from Social Security that the Social Security Administration could never tell you. Learn what these strategies are in a free Social Security analysis from Boss Retirement Solutions in Salt Lake, winner of Utah's Best of State Award for Retirement Planning. If you have not filed for your Social Security benefits and have saved more than $200,000, be one of the first 10 callers to schedule your free analysis now at 801-682-4448. Discover how you could get tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional Social Security income. 801-682-4448. 801-682-4448.
I'm Greg Hughes. I've been a champion for increased parental choice in education. We delivered well over $1 billion in new funding for our students the conservative way, by cutting taxes to grow this economy. It wasn't easy. Liberals and special interest groups attacked because we challenged the status quo, but we pushed through. Today, Utah doesn't need followers who try to avoid criticism and responsibility. We need bold conservative leadership to guide our state through these challenging times.
Paid for by Hughes for Governor.
Utah travel adventure starts in your own backyard with Cedar City. While it's true, Cedar City's home of the famous Shakespeare Festival, now it's time to let wonder be your guide. Discover another side of this cool southern Utah town. Cedar City is wonderful and loaded with adventure. From beautiful places like Bryan Head Resort's miles of chairlift rides, mini zip lines, mountain biking, and alpine slides. Or add the cool Alpine Cedar Breaks National Monument to your bucket list. Enrobed in the circle of painted cliffs, 150 species of wildflowers, hiking trails, and spectacular views. Nearby is Bryce and Co-op Canyons just off I-15. Plus, Cedar City has miles of new downhill and flow trails for riding. Now, if four-wheel adventures are your scene, Cedar City has over 400 miles of socially distanced OHV trails. Pack up your bikes, hiking shoes, ATVs, and fishing poles, because Cedar City isn't just a place for first-class theater. Here, you're the star of your own adventure. Plan your trip today. Let wonder be your guide at visitcedarcity.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Mountain America, your home for home loans. Here's Ricky Meese.
Construction delays linger both north and southbound Highway 89 between Uinta and South Weber through Layton. Also, southbound lanes have been blocked due to a crash with injuries downtown at 9th South and Main Street. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, big time change in the weather just ahead of the weekend. Clouds move in, maybe even some thunderstorms. There could be lightning and wind gusts as well. The weekend is warm, savor it, because next week it starts off cool again. Right now, broken clouds and 83 degrees at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM on 1160 AM and KSLNewsRadio.com. This is Utah's all-day companion for news.
Race Relations in Utah, a 1-hour special with Jeff Kaplan and Jason Lee of the Deseret News on KSL News Radio 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
KSL News Radio and on Facebook Live. There I am. Look. I'm Jeff Kaplan as our radio station continues a day-long focus on race relations and diversity in Utah. Our goal is to gain understanding by exploring some of the issues that have exploded in the weeks gone by. I'm joined by Deseret News journalist Jason Lee, who also hosts the podcast Voices of Reason, heard every Sunday, 3 p.m. here on KSL News Radio. Jason, as I mentioned, this conversation nationally erupted with the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. But the discussion quickly spread to white privilege and the unseen hardships faced by African Americans all over the country. And now let's talk about that.
So what we have to be able to do is have, well, I guess it is kind of uncomfortable, but it didn't have to be. Because as a Black person, you have to know that there are always going to be challenges. I wake up every day knowing that, and it sometimes is a pain in the butt, but you learn to live with it and you learn to adapt and overcome it.
Jason, what kind of challenges have you faced in everyday life in Utah?
Oh, man. Well, frequently, people don't know what to make of me. I get looked at a lot of times, if I used to ride the train to work when we actually came into work. And oftentimes people would not know if they could say hello to me because they don't know many people of color. So they thought of me as other. And I get that quite frequently, to be honest with you. And it's something I got used to growing up, even in the Midwest, when people don't have a lot of exposure, when you're of the majority culture and you don't have a lot of exposure to people outside of that, then it makes trying to reach out and be around other people seem a little uncomfortable for you. And so in that way, I try to put people at ease as much as I can, though they have to recognize they have the problem, not me.
Well, our guest, go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt.
Well, no, the idea is that everybody has to recognize everybody's humanity and think of them just as another person, not as other. That's what I would say.
Let's take other and make it more familiar with our two guests this segment.
On this segment, we have James Jackson III. He's the founder of the Utah Black Chamber of Commerce. And Sarah Jones, she is a founder and CEO of Inclusion Pro. It's a company that helps businesses and organizations promote diversity and be more inclusive in the workplace. And we hope to have a discussion where James and Sarah can talk to us about workplace dynamics and some of the challenges the minorities face in those environments. So first, I want to start with Sarah. You literally work with diversity and trying to help workplaces be more inclusive. What is that challenge, and what does that look like, and how can those kinds of things be achieved?
Well, right now, as you can imagine, there are a lot of leaders that run companies that are bewildered right now. They have been caught very unprepared and wondering how to proceed. I get a lot of inquiries from executives that they're very challenged because they know that they need to do something, but because it hasn't been a high priority within their organizations, they're struggling somewhat. And so I'm having a lot of conversations with leaders to help reframe what the conversations around racism can look like within their organization. To be honest, most of the time in corporations, we try to avoid race as much as possible. And that actually has not served us well, because people, quite frankly, don't have the communication skills to really be able to talk about the challenges. And I mean, this has been one of the most challenging times. And so the corporate leaders and leaders in workplaces are quite unprepared to know exactly what to do. They have employees that are, asking for calls to action, that are asking for statements around Black Lives Matter. And so you can imagine for these leaders, they're struggling. And what the opportunity has been really for me, not that any of us is pleased with any of the racial strife and the injustice that is going on, but there has been a massive wake-up call in a way that really has never happened for leaders to actually do something. And while I think there's a group that are being reactive, there's also another group that in the conversations, it's sort of like they've finally woken up to this understanding that diversity and inclusion within the workplace, it's not just you do an initiative or a training. There's this sustainability component that has to happen that are starting to be a part of a lot of my conversations. I think some of the relief that goes along with that, though, Jason, where I think before they've been, oh no, what do we do? Is it gives them some relief that this takes time. It takes time to change a culture. It takes time to build those communication skills and the right policies and training so that people can feel more comfortable around conversations like this. So I think in some sense, there's some relief there, but it really has caused them to think about what is the action that's required me of a leader. And for me, that has opened up a lot of opportunities to finally go in and build the right strategies within organizations so that they can build these sustainable, a sustainable strategy for long-term.
Sarah, this is Jeff Kaplan.
Yes.
A lot of times the exposure to diversity training comes when an NFL player gets in trouble for saying something stupid, or an owner does the same thing, and they're sent to diversity training. That's what many people know about diversity training. Is it a way for businesses to simply show, hey, we're trying to do something, or does something happen in this training that truly changes the dynamic in companies, businesses, and on football teams?
Great question, Jeff. So quickly, the answer is not going to be in just training. Right. So there needs to be an overall strategy that starts from the leadership team and creates alignment around the leadership team. And then the training is going to support the strategy, right, in many different ways with many different aspects. I think maybe one of the questions that you're hitting on is I think a lot of leaders are sitting there thinking, well, so for example, if you're leading a company in Utah, the Black population is it's about 2%. And then within the workplace, it may even be lower than that. So they're sitting there thinking, okay, I know I need to care about race and Black Lives Matter. I know we need to care. But the numbers of employees within my organization that are impacted are so small, right? Just as a practical matter, if they just look around and understand who is really, the most strongly impacted. And it's been actually a really great opportunity to help reframe a really important conversation, Jeff. And that is that when you do this work, it is not for just a small part of your employee base. When you do diversity and inclusion the right way, it actually benefits everyone. Inclusion is for everyone. And we've often thought of it as this thing that only, supports just a few people within the organization. And that's where we've actually gotten it wrong. So the way to rephrase that or reframe it for leaders is you're building a strategy so that everyone, even the groups that have historically struggled the most or not been given as much equity, can thrive within your organization. And we know from research that when you actually build products, processes, anything with the marginalized populations in mind, it actually creates a better product or solution for everyone. And so somehow we've missed that part of the conversation. I'll give you just a quick example. When we build technology, we realized that when people with disabilities were using technology, it actually didn't work the way that people with abilities were building it. So there was a lot of lessons learned. And the way that we actually use technology now with better user interfaces and things like that have been because we built the technology so that anyone can be able to use it. So that's an example where it actually serves the larger population, but we've never really understood diversity and inclusion to provide those kind of benefits.
Thank you for introducing the concept. Sarah is a diversity expert, and James Jackson III is the president of the Utah Black Chamber of Commerce. He'll join us in just a moment, a quick break, and back as we continue with this special hour about race relations and diversity. Jason Lee is with me, Jeff Kaplan, on KSL News Radio.
Have you tried to refinance or buy a home and find that rates are great, but you don't qualify? Can you really get a 30-year mortgage at only 2.5% fixed rate? The answer is yes, but let's be clear, it is not easy. Rates are great, but lenders are being very, very cautious. Well, Wendy Everett with Mortgages by Wendy.com, she's been an underwriter, processor, and loan officer in Utah for over 20 years. She knows the mortgage business inside and out. Call her. She promises you'll get the best deal for your situation. Because they fund many of their loans, they can say yes when others say no. So call 855-YES-WENDY. 855-YES-WENDY. 2.5% rate for 30-year mortgage is amazing. But if you don't qualify, they have other programs that will save you thousands. That's Wendy's promise. Visit mortgagesbywendy.com or call 855-YES-WENDY. 855-YES-WENDY.
A beautiful Bullfrog Spa can be your family gathering place year-round. During our endless summer sale, save over $3,000. Plus, get a free high-tech audio system worth $1,500. Order your family's customized, energy-efficient Bullfrog Spa from your nearest Bullfrog factory store in Salt Lake, Bluffdale, Orem, Springville, Logan, Layton, and North Ogden. Endless summer sale ends Saturday. Bullfrog Spas. Peaceful body, peaceful mind, peaceful home.
I'm John Huntsman, and I approve this message. Today, we face the most significant crisis in a century, and addressing it will require someone who understands how global forces impact families right here at home. Returning Utah to prosperity won't happen without a strategy. During my first term as governor, we had a plan. We put it into action, and we laid the foundation for 15 years of economic growth. Now more than ever, Utah needs a proven and experienced governor, a governor who can lead. For more information, visit huntsman2020.com.
Race relations in Utah. In-depth coverage on KSL News Radio.
Jeff Kaplan here with Jason Lee from the Deseret News. You don't have to agree with what you hear. It's important, though, that you understand our guests. Sarah Jones is the founder and CEO of Inclusion Pro, a company that helps other businesses and organizations promote diversity and make themselves more inclusive. We're also joined by James Jackson III, the founder of the Utah Black Chamber of Commerce, and we thank you for joining us on KSL News Radio.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. Yeah.
So, James, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the challenges that particularly African-American business people face here in Utah in trying to grow their businesses and hopefully become part of the mainstream business community.
Yeah, absolutely. The main challenge right now, of course, is what's been most visible than that as ever before, is really trying to find the Black businesses, first of all. Just as Sarah mentioned, we have a very small Black population, and for so long, it's mainly just been the Black businesses serving its, excuse me, our Black community. The goal of the Black Chamber is really to expand that influence so they can cross that bridge and serve the entire community. And so we've been making an efforts there. So that's one challenge. The other challenge is just that minority businesses in general have never had the same access as the white businesses. And this stems all the way back to the days of redlining in real estate, we're still trying to overcome. And because of that, we have a disproportionate wealth gap within the white community and the minority community. So whereas the Black household will maybe have a $7,000 net worth, and a white majority household will have, anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 of net worth. So the economic capital to invest into a business is not quite there. So the businesses end up being underbanked, not be able to qualify for the loans because they don't have enough collateral to push through. And so we're working through those challenges in order to help overcome those challenges, to give them more access to capital and education, and the visibility in order for these businesses to grow and thrive here in Utah.
Is there a way to have majority businesses understand that and maybe somehow promote doing more collaboration with minority businesses so that bridge can be that gap can be bridged? I mean,
we're working on that right now. We of course have an outpouring support of people from the community. Now everybody's eyes are wide open at the same time and wanting to find out how they could become a better ally, how they can support the Black community and the Black-owned businesses, but not only become a consumer of the Black businesses, but being support on the back end and offering their skills and abilities and talents to help educate them, help provide, whatever type of services they need. And banks have found opportunities to where they can provide microloans or grants, or working with the CDFI in order to give them access to capital. And so we're working on strategies and collaborating with a lot of financial institutions right now for that.
Excellent. And Sarah, last question for you. I wanted to get a sense of people just having conversations, not necessarily the leaders, but even the people in workplaces. What can be done so that people can feel more comfortable with each other and have more inclusive and diverse workplaces that can be enriching?
Well, I'm just going to say people are already talking in your workplace. Even if you're not hearing it, those conversations are going on. So I think that there needs to be an awareness with leaders that these conversations are happening, and it's up to you whether or not you choose to engage and really understand the sentiments and feelings that your teams are feeling. There was this actually interesting situation that came up with one of my clients, and our employees are actually also impacted by customers, right? And this conversation is everywhere. It's a global conversation. And one of their employees, who happened to be Black, was speaking with a customer who just, went off on Black Lives Matter on a business call. And she didn't know what to do. And she didn't know if she was able to push back on the customer. And so that's an example where I think that leaders need to understand these conversations are happening. Some of those things can be worked into their policies and somewhere along the lines, because again, we've tried to really kind of avoid these conversations in the corporate space. There's an opportunity there to reframe and renew your policies and retrain your employee base so that they have the ability to have these and not worry about being able to stand up for themselves or stand up against racism. So that's an example where I think just work on not being disconnected from what those conversations are happening. And I think as leaders, there are ways that we can create the right forums for this to happen in a way that can create some mutual learning and some understanding that might not have existed before. I think there's a big push for anyone who is not Black to do a lot of their own homework. And I think that's certainly a very wise decision for anyone who needs to learn more or understand better about the Black experience. But I do think there are opportunities where you can actually engage and not even just talk about the Black experience, but retrain people to talk about their own race, right? If you think about the way we've thought about race in the workplace, it's usually the people of color that, have the quote, quote, challenges. And so therefore they constantly have to voice how race impacts them in the workplace, but white people never have to talk about how their race impacts their work experience. So if you think about that opportunity to build that capacity within all of your workplace, it can really help humanize and connect each other better together.
Sarah Jones, thank you so much for joining us. Jason, some people say, what's the big deal? They make jokes aimed at an African-American or a Hispanic coworker or fellow employee, and the other workers find it to be normal workplace banter, and called on the carpet, the standard response is, "Oh, I was just messing around." And, well, he didn't say it bothered him. Have any of you ever experienced this?
That's a good question. I don't know that I haven't spoken up, because I don't have that in me not to speak up. So I would say that people have been more careful, and when I have addressed them, and I don't feel like I've been especially offended, they've been receptive as far as I can know. James, have you had that experience?
Oh yeah, I grew up a shy, passive person, pretty much all my life. You may not see it right now, but given all the circumstances, but I grew up pretty shy and passive, and people make comments within school or at work, and I really didn't know how to take it. I didn't really have the courage back then to respond or say anything. And fortunately, I had some friends around me that would stand up for me, or they would say something, or other times I would just pretend like I didn't hear it and just walk away within the workspace. And it did make a very uncomfortable experience within that work environment, and wasn't really sure how to address it, because I wasn't sure if that culture was designed for me to approach my management team and say, "Hey, this has happened." I didn't want it to go back to those other people and make it feel like that was, being the informant or whatnot, but definitely makes it pretty uncomfortable.
Sarah, how about you?
I think people are pretty careful around me. I don't think I'm a scary person, but given the work that I do and that I've been doing diversity and inclusion for a very long time, I think it typically, chills any of that type of banter. But what I have seen a few times are leaders that, I had one leader say, I have this radar. When I'm in a room, I kind of know that things are going to go south, and so I kind of turn around and walk away before things get out of hand, because I don't want to be part of it. And I thought, gosh, that's a shame, because there's an opportunity to disrupt that type of behavior, especially if you're in a leadership role. And this was a leader within the organization. And I think a lot of us are afraid to insert ourselves or to get involved. They might even be friends of ours, right? And that becomes a really big challenge in the workplace. But we've got to get comfortable with disrupting that behavior when we see it and when it happens. And that's really the only way that we're going to change that culture. There's absolutely skills around doing that in a way that doesn't, that you won't fracture. In fact, I'm doing a training tomorrow at the Salt Lake Chamber called The Language of Inclusive Leadership. So I think there's communication skills that are highly effective in those situations, but we've got to learn as leaders to be resilient and to speak up when that is happening.
Well, there's been no shouting this hour. We hope even if you don't agree with what you've heard, at least perhaps you might understand. Sarah Jones, James Jackson III, thank you so much for joining us, as well as our guests, Chris Burbank and Monica Williams. Jason Lee, it's been an interesting hour.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
You'll hear Jason Lee on Sunday as the co-host of Voices of Reason, which is also a podcast at KSL News Radio. Jason Lee is an esteemed journalist at the Deseret News. Our executive producers, Kevin LaRue and Kristen Sorensen, producer Andrew Hull, our console engineer, Amber Gentry, and the discussion continues on Live Mic next.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City.
Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Nick Wyatt with KSL's top stories this half hour.
The coronavirus.
New calls for masks in some western states. Here's AC's Alex Stone.
Governors in Texas and Arizona are asking all of their residents to wear masks. They're mandated now in California, Nevada, and Washington State. Salt Lake City Mayor Erin Mendenhall is asking Utah's governor for the authority to mandate masks in her city. She says the science is there and that masks should not be a political issue of left versus